You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Sergeant Bryan Washko, how you doing?
Great to be here.
I really appreciate you coming out here. I know you made a long drive.
No, it's my pleasure to be here. Like I said, it sounds like it's going to be a good time.
I'm excited. Yeah. Tell folks a little bit about you.
My name is Bryan Washko. I'm from Killeen, Texas. Grew up there. Actually, I came to this country speaking another language. You can't tell my accent,
really?
But I came from Germany. My dad was in the Army. He married my mother over, and she's from Germany. And got here in I was born in 1977, got here in 1981, and spoke majority of German. So
really?
Got stationed to Killeen, Texas at Fort Hood. So back and forth over the summers, I would go spend time with my family in Germany, my brother and I, but now I'm an American citizen, but I was born in a German hospital and everything while he was stationed over there.
You get a perfect Texas accent. So.
Well, I know. That's what I mean. I speak German fluently, but not as well as I did when I was a child because it kind of goes away.
Yeah.
But yeah, my mom, she just came down to visit about 2 weeks ago. She's a retired flight attendant from Lufthansa Airlines, and got to see her. It was the first time in 6 years because of COVID. She was going to come a couple years ago. It got pushed for a few years, but I got an older brother, Stephen. He's in the Air Force, Lieutenant Colonel, about to retire in September, and a younger brother, Davey. He's in the Navy. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, I got two kids. My oldest is an 82nd Airborne, and he's over in Poland right now by the Ukraine border, and I have a young 13-year-old still in school.
So you got a long line of people who serve.
Yeah, and this was a decision of mine to become. I never went in the military. That's one of my biggest regrets. But when I was 11 years old, I wanted to be a state trooper. When I was in 4-H, my 4-H leader named Pete Wilkson was a state trooper, and he would come in uniform, and I thought, man, he's a cowboy and a cop all in one. That's exactly what I want to do.
Yeah.
So I remember him saying, keep your nose clean, stay out of trouble. Well, that was really hard to do when I was rodeoing and raising all kinds of heck in Killeen, but I didn't get caught. So I made it. And when I became a trooper, I got to work for him for 1 year. But prior to this, I was a city cop in Killeen that's where I started. And then I was there about a year, and then went to Stephenville for 6 years, and then went to Highway Patrol in 2005.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of rodeoing did you do?
I did bull riding, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. I was much skinnier and smaller back then, but I broke a lot of things, and I had a time of my life doing it. I started at 13, quit when I was 18.
So what got you into bull riding?
I just, I guess I was one of those kids that when you want to do something, you see something and you latch yourself onto it and just you make it happen. And I was watching Mesquite Rodeo. You remember that show from up in Mesquite, Texas? It would come on late Saturday nights. Don Gay and his dad had this rodeo arena, and they would have every Saturday a Mesquite Rodeo. And
maybe I do remember that because I do remember Don Gay.
And I would watch it, and I thought, man, that's exactly what I want to do. So I started researching it. We didn't have internet back then, so I found something like a rodeo newspaper when you have like youth rodeos you could sign up for. And I found that the Killeen Riding and Roping Club had a youth rodeo every June, signed up for it, and there were some practice arenas in the area, and started doing it.
What's the highest high and lowest low of bull riding that you had?
Of course, a lot of broken bone. The one rodeo my grandmother from Germany and my mom were at was the Killeen Rodeo, and I broke my collarbone. We sat in the hospital till late at night, but the highs were just, you didn't win much money. I'd win here and there, a buckle or so, and a little check, but it was just the fun. I lived for it. My whole room was wallpapered with bull riding stuff, and you couldn't pay me enough to get on one now. It was crazy back then, but I'm 45 years old now. I'd probably just break something really easy. But I have a roping horse now. I've always had horses, and getting into team roping, so it's a lot safer. You don't have to get bucked off.
Does your wife do any of that kind of stuff?
She rides horses with me. She's learning to rope. I've taught her how to swing a rope, and I told her we're building an arena right now, and I said, you're going to be roping some steers one day, so it's going to happen.
That's
Get
exciting.
her to do it. Yeah, it is. So the highest high, I guess, was just being with the freedom you had with your friends, going to these bull ridings, and when you're climbing on the back of the chute, putting your rope and everything on. Yeah, we're always first to go in a rodeo, but they had the bulls up front, and they had a first and second session. It kind of kickstarted the rodeo off with excitement, and then they had the other half of the bull riders at the end to kind of keep people there, not leave early. But every time they play, when I hear the national anthem, I get my heart just starts beating because that was right before we'd ride. We're standing there with our hat in our hand, the national anthem, and then boom, you get on and ride.
Wow.
So there's nothing like the smell of the bulls, the heat, the flies, and the national anthem. I mean, that'll get your adrenaline going. But
definitely.
I was never scared to do it, but boy, inside you're just at adrenaline rush. It was terrifying because you don't know what's going to happen. And we didn't wear helmets and vests back then.
Yeah.
That was the old days where we were a lot tougher, I guess, now. But I wish we did because I would have had a lot less injuries.
I'll be honest with you. When I watch bull riding and I see a guy with a helmet and vest, I get it 100%.
Oh, yeah, and all the professionals have them because it's a career maker. Now, I mean, you're one ride away from getting paralyzed or killed. Yeah. So, I mean, you've seen people, they butt heads with these bulls with the helmets and smashes the helmet. They have a little cut from the mask, whatever. But had they not had that helmet on, they'd be dead.
Who was the bull rider, famous guy, smashed his face in? He was
Tough Hedeman.
Tough. Was it tough?
Let me tell you, when I was a cop in Stephenville, I mentioned that earlier where I was at, I got to meet my heroes like Ty Murray, Jim Sharp, Tough Hedeman, the Carrillo brothers, all those guys that I emulated watching bull riding. There was a cop hanging out with them and at certain events and getting to meet them. And I was like, man, it's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
But yeah,
Tough
Hedeman, it was bodacious. And that's why they retired that bull. He came down. That's why his face had to be totally reconstructed because of that bull's bucking style. He kind of walked on his front end and his back end came up so high to where it would just, the centrifugal force just throw people down and his head would come up and it happened to a few guys.
Yeah. Well, as bad as Tough or?
Yeah. Scott Breding was another one that happened too. He had his face rearranged,
Man.
But yeah, that was me. You wouldn't. I'm 6'6", 235. They're like, you don't look like a bull rider. Well, I'll show you a picture when we're done with this. How I looked back then. I was skinny, looked like a pencil with a hat on top of it.
Well, you're definitely a different breed because you couldn't get me to mutton bust. I wouldn't. It wouldn't go anywhere with me on it at this point. But you couldn't get me to do that.
Yeah.
But I love it. I love watching it.
It is. I still watch it. We sponsor some bull ridings in the area, and I like seeing these young guys get on and they're so good now that the bulls, the style of bucking has gotten, these bulls are such athletes now compared to what they were before they'd come out. Some would spin, some would just go straight down the arena, but the ones they have now, they're smaller, they're leaner. They're athletes. You see these things jump up in the air spinning and they're very hard to ride. I wouldn't have a chance if I was riding these bulls today.
Is every bull's bucking style just depend on the bull, or can they breed that style?
They breed these styles. They have it's called the ABBI, American Buck and Bull Industry, or I forget what the I stands for. I think it's industry. It's like a racehorse. They breed racehorses for the same way they breed bulls. They have offspring that are females bred with other offspring that are males, and all from bucking heritage and on both sides. And these animals are phenomenal the way they've come across, and that's why they're worth anywhere. Some of them are $100,000 bulls.
Oh man, that's big
business. If you ever watch the PBR, I mean, you see these guys are making millions now. These Brazilians are coming up here and they're dominating it because they've been riding bulls. If you ever look online, you can go to YouTube and they have just a homemade arena in the back with a wooden chute. They're riding in flip-flops and a grass rope, and these guys are good. That's why I love watching them ride because for one, they're so hungry for the money because if you win $1 million here, I mean, yeah, that's a lot of money, but you turn that into Brazil, that's $10 million, $20 million. I mean,
it's life-changing.
You buy ranches down there, your family, they start buying bulls and cattle and everything down there. So these guys have that hunger because the money is magnified 10 times fold for them.
When I used to watch it back in the day, it's been a while. There was maybe one or two Brazilians, but I guess there's a lot more now, huh?
Adriano Moraes was one that kind of led the path.
I think
in
that's
1994.
The one I remember,
he's world champion. He's one of the best there ever was. Yeah,
that's crazy.
I know.
I love that you know all these names because
I know. Well, that was my life, And then as I got older, I said, man, I need to quit because I want to be a cop. And I applied with Highway Patrol when I was 20. I remember doing my interview. I just turned 21. It was the day Tammy Wynette died. I was in the lobby watching it on the news in Waco and so nervous because they did all my background and everything. And I had went in for my interview and I felt I did really well. And the guy that walked me out, he put his hand on my shoulder. He said, man, you did good, but you're very young. He goes, it took me five, 6 times to get in. He said, just keep trying if we don't hire you. So I said, well, I'm going to be a cop somewhere. So I don't know if they're going to hire me or not. So I applied with Killeen, Coppers Cove, all the areas of Fort Worth, Dallas, all these departments. I just said, look, I'm going to apply in case DPS doesn't hire me. So they didn't hire me. So I got hired with Killeen Police Department, my hometown. What better place? And started their academy in October of 1998. And on the third day of the police academy, DPS called and offered me a job for the second school. And in my interview with Killeen PD, they said, "What's your status with DPS?" I said, "Well, I don't know." And they said, "Well, we'd like to hire you. What would you do if we put you in the academy?" And DPS called. And I said, "Well, if they called, I won't go if you hired me." Thinking they wasn't going to call. Well, they called. And guess what? I stuck to my word. Something told me to, everyone was like, "You're crazy to turn DPS down." I said, "Well, I got to stick to my word because I told Killeen that I would give him a shot." So I told the recruiter, I said, "Hey, give me a couple years. I'll reapply in 2 years." And he thought it was crazy too, but yeah, I did what I felt was right. And it all worked out because I was a cop in Killeen for about a year, then met my ex-wife and had moved up to the Stephenville area. Was a cop there for 6 years. I've learned some things that I would have never learned as a trooper, as a city police officer. And that way, when I went to Highway Patrol when I was 28 years old, I think it made me a better, well-rounded officer for some of the things I've seen and done.
Yeah, I think some of the hardest things in the world to do, one of them is living with integrity. And I always tell people, I'm like, when they kind of pay me a compliment on something that I say or do or stick to, I always tell them, blame my dad.
Yeah.
I said I wouldn't do it otherwise.
Yeah, and I just felt I had to do what was right. It wasn't about me at this point. I was like, man, what if they'd never hire me again? But I wrote a letter, and the recruiter said, no, they're not going to hold it against you. Just explain the reason why you're not coming in. And to me, I like to see that, it was the way I was guided into that position, into those areas, and met certain people in my life and helped, and certain people, and hoped I've saved some lives in the aspect that I was a cop up in Stephenville, and maybe I was more mature going in at 28, especially some of the things I've done as a cop, city cop, because you do so much more. You're talking to sexual assault victims. You're going into people's house during family violence, prominent people. I mean, wealthy people in the community, as opposed, and the dirt poor people, because no one's immune from family issues and being victims of a crime. So, of course, we didn't disclose any information to family. We kept it all professionally, but I thought you go up to this big house, this domestic violence, and think, man, these people have it all. But, they have the same problems as normal folks do.
Yeah.
And, I learned you're basically kind of like a counselor, a psychologist, all in one. And being a cop, it was the best job in the world. I love putting on the uniform every day. But this Texas tan is what I've always strived for. And got on with DPS. I hired in 2006, started the academy beginning of 6, applied in 2005. And it's a very tough academy. It's 6.5 months long, and it's very grueling. You're running anywhere from 20 plus miles a week. They PT you.
Oh, wow.
They basically tear you down just to build you back up. It's basically a lot like the Marine Corps boot camp, according to a lot of the Marines that were in there. 75% of them are prior military that were in my class. And they said, yeah, this is like our boot camp. It's just a whole lot longer. But, we knew what the prize was at the very end, because they'll wake you up in the middle of the night. You go down at 2 a.m, take a test and everything. They're teaching you that as a trooper, you're going to get that call at 2 a.m. You got to go to a fatality crash where there's 4 or 5 people laying there dead, and there's a drunk standing over there with a little cut on his head. Now you have to process the scene, do the field sobriety testing, make sure your case is right, so this person justice is served on this person who just killed this family for drinking and driving. So the stress level's there.
Yeah.
And knowing that we're out there working by ourselves, I could tell you all the times I've been on the fight on the side of the road, rolling around at night in the bar ditch, and cars are just going by, and they don't even know, because all they see is lights. They can't really see. Mm-hmm. And you're down there thinking, and there's a gun in every fight we're in. It's the one we're wearing. And if they overpower us and get that gun, they're going to kill you with it, because if there's a reason why they don't want to go to jail, because they know that you're the one thing that's keeping them from going to prison. Yeah. So, but maybe that's the adrenaline junkie in me that liked that part, and just serving the community. I love Texas, and being able to wear the cowboy hat too. So
yeah, it's definitely cool.
I know, but it's been a blast. And the opportunities I've had with DPS is I got, when Rick Perry ran for governor, I was on a security detail and traveled the country with him, and got to see the world. And it was through this line of work, and it was so much fun. Yeah, it was a lot of work, long hours, long days, but we got to travel and had a lot of fun doing it.
How long is that process when you get selected and you go through? How long is that before you're I guess, put to work?
Of course, you have to go through your basic academy. It's 6.5 months long. And then when you graduate, toward the end of the graduation, they kind of tell you, you get a dream sheet, we call it, give us 3 choices where you'd like to be in Texas. And they try to put you where you're happiest. And if not, there was guys in my class that went to South Texas griping this, oh man, I don't want to go down there. They didn't want that, but guess what? They're still there 16 years later. They got married and have kids and love it. But
hey, let me tell you something. I'm from South Texas, and there's no place better.
Oh no, I love South Texas. Other than the heat, when we work the border all the time. We've been working the border, since 2007. I was the first time I ever went down there, and the people were just great. I love the people. I mean, South Texas people are I'm used to Dallas, Fort Worth people, and some Austin folks and here. Not saying they're bad, but South Texas, it's the culture, it's the food, number one. And they love to have a good time too, the parties. And it's just, I loved it down there. And I told my wife, I said, man, if I ever promoted, ended up in South Texas, we'd probably stay there forever. McAllen's beautiful. The traffic sucks as anywhere else, but the shopping centers, the palm trees everywhere, I fell in love with it. I enjoyed it. So
it's funny because I've got I talked to a buddy of mine that I work with. He's from Missouri. And, it's funny because the farther north you get, and this is just me being ignorant, the farther north you get, the stranger people are, and I mean, don't get me wrong, got some weirdos down here too, in South, but I don't, like you said, I don't know if it's the food, I don't know if it's the mixed culture between, Mexico and the United States, and then you've got Texas and the heat, there's this, it's like it's all simmering, right? Yeah. And you get a different stew than when you do in Dallas.
Exactly,
And I haven't been to a whole lot of places, and part of that is just because, my family's down here. I hate to get too far away from them, but man, I love South Texas.
But I think now that I'm thinking about it, is maybe it's because the place I've been in, Dallas, Fort Worth, Killeen, all those people were transplants. They're not from there. That's not home. So maybe the people who I dealt with in South Texas, they've been there for generations. Maybe that's why they have that laid back attitude and they're friendly. I mean, how many times I've gone into Starbucks in uniform, and by the time I get, when I'm standing in line, the person in front of me already paid for it down there. I mean, and that happens up here too every now and then, and especially in the drive-thrus. But down there in McAllen, I remember it was very rare every time we'd eat somewhere. And then we got per diem to eat on, but the waitress comes to, hey, that somebody already took care of your food. And we're like, who? And they're like, well, I got to tell you. I wanted to thank them. But so what we did, we gave the waitress all the money for the food anyway as a tip.
Yeah.
So we pass it forward. But, we thank everybody that out there has done that before. And I've done that myself with my wife. There's a group of Killeen cops the other day. And I said, I'm going to buy their meal. And, those guys are out there working and they're young. They didn't even have to shave yet. But I remember being in their shoes, not having much money because you're not going to make a lot of money as a rookie cop. And I said, I want to take care of their tab.
Well, I mean, that's one thing I guess I want to talk to you about. Probably one of my on the bottom list, but I feel like in Texas is the greatest state on the planet.
It is. But
I feel like there's a lot more appreciation for law enforcement down here than maybe in other parts of the country. And I try and be super careful because a lot of that, what you see on the news, you assume that that's the totality of everything. And it's not necessarily the case. But, you hear about, I think I was listening to the radio the other day, I think it was Seattle was losing law enforcement right and left. I think
for good reason. I mean, look what they've done to that. Those people, those officers are wanting to serve that community. That's their home. Yeah. But when you don't have the backing by your own government, whether it's the city council or the state, and you're one traffic stop away from going to prison yourself, even though you justifiably use the force necessary when the system in that area is against you, why would you stay? I mean, and then who suffers ultimately? For one, that person doesn't get to do the job where they want to. They choose to be there. It's not like the Army. They send you somewhere. These Seattle cops, these Detroit cops, New York cops, they're all where they want to be. That's home to them, but they're leaving in droves and early retirements because of the way the systems in those areas are. And thank God Texas is still, we have great backing by our state. And, if we mess up, we mess up. But, we have guidelines we have to follow. We just because we have lights and sirens, people always joke, oh, you can get there in a hurry, lights and sirens. I'm like, no, I'm responsible if I hurt somebody, recklessly. If we're in a pursuit, we have the discretion. Like if I'm out in the middle of nowhere and we're coming into a town, this guy's keeping it at 110, I'm turning my lights off and stopping because I don't want him to blow through small town Texas at 110 and end up killing somebody. And I don't know why he's even running. Now, if it's a little different, we take into the circumstances why they're running. If it's, if there's a kidnapping suspect or a murder suspect, we're going to try to safely chase them down if there is a way to do it safely. But somebody who just didn't have a front license plate or has a suspended license and they're running from us, we're going to let them go because it's not worth your family or mine getting run over. But yeah, back to Texas. We're seeing we have several openings for DPS. So, people out there listening, it is a great career. We're hiring. I think we have about 600, and they're going to ask for another 1,200 troopers because 30 million people in Texas right now.
Yeah.
And in 2000, we're at 20 million. And in 1981, we're like, 8 or 10 million. So Texas has tripled in the last 40 years.
That's amazing, isn't it?
I know. It's crazy. You could see that in the traffic coming down here when I'm on my way down, even on a Saturday early morning. There's cars everywhere, rush hour. Even at $5 a gallon gas prices, man, they're still out there.
Yeah.
But that's because they have to be, and people are out there working. Trucks are up and down the road. So,
my buddy Bojan, he's a home builder. He's the guy that owns this place. He does a lot of home building for people out of California and New York, and they're coming in droves, and it's a ton of them. Hopefully, it's the good ones. But I guess we'll find out.
Look at the Tesla. Have you driven through Austin? Look at the Tesla building.
No, I go around.
It's
Austin.
like a mile long. Well, I do too on the tollway, and that's where Elon Musk built that Tesla.
Oh, did
plant.
he? Okay,
yeah. That thing is over. It takes at 85 miles an hour. It'll take you. I forget how I timed it the other day when I was coming from San Antonio. I forget how long it takes, but at 85, because the speed limit's 85 up there, and it's such a massive complex that it's like you're not even moving.
Really?
It takes you a while to pass it. So, but yeah, California messed around with him, tried to shut him down during COVID, and he's like, no, that's not an option. We have to, we lose millions an hour if we shut down. They're like, sorry. He's like, well, I'm going to Texas. See ya. And he's bringing, and that facility is going to bring billions to our economy and jobs, just like in Taylor, small town Taylor, Texas. I used to work out there when I was a trooper in Georgetown. They're building a $17 billion Samsung plant.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to
that's going to create thousands of jobs, not only at the Samsung plant, but for the houses. Because Taylor's like that movie Transformers with Mark Wahlberg, it was filmed in Taylor, Texas.
No kidding.
The downtown chase scene with all the explosions and everything.
Yeah. That
was downtown Taylor.
I had no idea.
Yeah, you have to watch it. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. I'll have to watch that again. Is that the one where he's out on the farm or something too?
Yeah, and where they have him climbing the silos and everything. And I was training this female troop, and we were looking on YouTube. You could put Taylor, Texas, and I'll send it to you. The making of Transformers, and we actually went down and looked at all the places when we were on patrol. I said, look, really here's cool. That scene right here. I know, it's really cool. But talking to the locals, they had like the explosions in the street. They had shut it down, and it was pretty fascinating, the movie magic.
So then with that kind of influx of population in the state, it sounds like you guys will be hiring for a while.
Oh, yeah. And like I said, the money, as a cop, I always say you're not going to get rich. But however, let me put it in perspective. When I started DPS, I took a pay cut coming from the police department I was at to go to the academy, and I knew it would get better after I graduated. You get a big raise, and then going back after you graduate the academy, they don't just throw you out on the highway. You're 6 months with a training officer, so you get you're not by yourself till after 6 months. So after that 1 year, you get a pretty good bump in pay. But when I started, I remember saying, because after 20 years, back in 2005, as a 20-year trooper, you're going to make $60,000. I was telling my ex-wife, I said, man, that's pretty good money as a cop, because I was making 30-something at Stephenville. And I said, man, after 20 years, I'll be making $60,000. That's pretty cool. Well, now they're starting them in the academy at in the $70,000s.
Really?
In the academy. Wow. So when they graduate, and after 4 years, they're going to be making over $100,000. That's amazing. A recruiting tool that we want to get applicants, and we are getting quite a few. We're getting state troopers from other states, and because Texas is, it is the best place to be.
And I would imagine with being able to make that kind of money, you're also kind of reaching out to more quality type applicants.
Exactly. And like I said, it's we had a lot of openings, and we had a lot of people applying, but they're very selective, and how they picked me, hell, I don't know, but they did. Maybe I fooled them in the oral board, but it's very they're very selective because, and this is the problem we're seeing with law enforcement now in cities, is that nobody wants to be a cop. The people who, with the atmosphere of everything that went on a couple of years ago, people who were getting out of the military and out of college to become a police officer, they're like, no, I'm going to become a fireman and go into the medical field. So now these departments, unfortunately, have to hire people that they would normally call out of the hiring process. So now these bad apples, or bad applicants, so to speak, are putting a badge and gun on. Well, what do you think that's going to do?
Yeah.
It's only going to make matters worse with communities, because they're not they're in it for all the wrong reasons. You know, they're in it for them because they want to wear the badge. And if you think a badge and a gun, you put that on and walk down the street gives you power, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. You know, and it doesn't give you respect. It's like I said, it's not about you as an individual. You know, it's about your community, because there's evil out there, and it comes in all shapes and forms, races, everything. You know, people always say, "Oh yeah, you've racist." You know, cops are racist. Hell no, we're not. You know, and I had this conversation with. I've stopped a black female once, and we ended up being out there for like 30 minutes. Man, it looked like a plane was just fixing to come in the building.
Oh
I
yeah,
guess
there's an airport right next door.
It's like planes going down. I stopped this black female on the interstate and outside of Austin, and of course, this was probably 2019. There's a lot of strife with, you know, the black communities in some agencies, and she said, "You stopped me because I'm black," and just was going on and on. And I just stood there and then took a deep breath. I was like, "Ma'am," I said, "Well, you ready?" I said, "Because let me tell you a little about me, who I am." And I talked to her a little bit, and I said, "And the reason you're getting stopped, you have a tail light out." And it was dark. I said, "You think for one reason that if, you know, it's dark out, if I was to stop you because you're black, I can't even tell who you are, and it's dark outside." I said, "But let me tell you something about cops," and this is my theory. I told her at the time, I was doing this for 20 years. I said, "Let me tell you about if somebody's racist and becomes a cop, two things are going to happen. One, they're either going to quit because they have to serve the opposite race that they don't like and help them out at times, or there's going to be a switch that flips in their head and think, all this BS I was told about this individual race, because it comes from whoever raises you, because you see little kids, different colors, they play with each other like it's nothing. They don't even recognize They look different. They don't care." And I said that switch is going to get flipped, and they're going to realize, man, these people aren't bad. I mean, I tell people all the time, there's white people that it's going to kill me. There's black people that could kill me, Hispanic. I said, but there's also the opposite, flip that around. They're going to save your life too if you're laying there bleeding. Yeah. I said, so that whole racism thing, it's still hard to believe that we're talking about this in 2022, and how this is something that's so, I don't know. I can't put my finger on it. It's mind-boggling that somebody could look at somebody, oh, he's black or he's Hispanic, I don't like him. They're stupid people or whatever. I don't get it. I mean, you don't even know that person.
And you know, there's some of that goes around just throughout everything. But you know, I tell people all the time, I've had conversations with folks, and you know, I told them it doesn't matter where you go, that exists everywhere. You know, there's people in Japan who can't stand Koreans. I said it happens everywhere. Yeah. But at the same time, I think your interaction with that lady is what's important. You know, I think that's when you have a spokesman for a department saying, "Hey, our department's not racist, and this is why." You know, people tend to go, "Yeah, right." Yeah. You know, but when you have a one-on-one interaction,
and I did, and to go back on that stop, we ended up, you know, she calmed down. We talked. She goes, "You know, you're pretty cool." And I said, "You know, and I hate that you had a bad experience with an officer, or have seen some things that made you think that, but I can assure you, I've never heard an officer that I work with, or even whether they're a city cop or a sheriff's deputy, say anything racist, because we definitely would handle that. That's unacceptable in this line of work. It's unacceptable anywhere, but especially as an officer, because you serve all communities. And maybe it's because I grew up in a military town. I mean, gosh, from the time I was in kindergarten, we had, here's how the military world's broke up. We had black, white, Filipino, Korean, Chinese. We had Puerto Rican and Mexican. We had basically every race on the earth and culture stuck into one area. So
it's like living in Houston.
Yeah. So
it really is.
You know, you have folks from Africa. I mean, the blacks from Africa are different than blacks from here. You know, they have the really long names. And, you know, I had some friends that had this crazy names I couldn't pronounce. But, you know, as a child growing up, that's just everybody. So when I did grow up and I had moved to where my ex-wife lived up north in Hamilton, it was a majority white town. There were no blacks, a few Hispanics, and I could hear some of the things coming out of the older generation's mouth that were upsetting. Because like, man, how the heck does he still say something like that? Because I chalk it up to because maybe his whole life that man's never known a black person or had a black friend. You know, so it's easy for them to say something like that, derogatory against somebody. That's just my thoughts on it.
I was telling you earlier, my father-in-law's black. He's 89 now. And it's funny because I've seen him around people saying ugly things, and he takes it with a grain of salt, and he'll tell you, he's like, we're old, that's how they're raised. Yeah. You know, and you know, I think as time goes on, there's less and less of that. But you know, I tell people all the time, I'm like, stop listening to what you're being told.
Turn the TV off and interact with your community around you.
Yes. What are your experiences? What are your experiences? Are they good? Well, then that tells you something.
Yeah.
You know, quit listening to what you're being fed.
Exactly. There was when I used to work the Houston Rodeo off duty, we'd go down there and work, and they'd pay us, and we'd take like a week vacation and go down there. And there was an old man, trying to think of his name. He was 93 years old, still in uniform.
Oh, wow.
They had him like at the front desk, but he was this icon of the Houston Police Department. And when he started, I forget, he had to have been on for 60 something years. So when he first started, he couldn't drive a car. He had to work in black neighborhoods only, couldn't arrest a white person, and his number had a character in it that specified him as a black officer.
Oh, wow.
So if he came across something where a white person had to be arrested, he had to call a white officer. But he was not. He was on foot patrol. But that was in Houston, and that's something you would think happened in the 1800s. No, that happened in the 1900s somethings. You know, in the I guess that would be the 50s.
Yeah.
Maybe the mid 50s. I mean, you know, and we've come such a long way with diversity and education. And to me, like I said, I grew up with everybody. So to me, being around somebody who black, Hispanic, Asian, I don't label them as that. I label them as, oh, this is my new friend here. I don't know, this is my Asian friend, or this is my black friend. You know, that's the problem with it. My opinion is society, it was always labeling people by their race. Quit it.
Yeah.
Label them as the Texans, Americans. That's what they are. Who cares what the color they are? I mean, that's something that I think needs to stop.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it takes so much energy to be negative like that.
Yeah.
It really does.
It does. It's so much easier to be friendly, and you know, these people have a chip on their shoulder. I don't know, but as for perspective in law enforcement, we serve all communities, and you know, growing up in Killeen, it's majority black, and I had a lot of black friends, and I've been in their homes as kids, and I've seen different cultures and how they are different than say my Korean friends. You know, we always had to take our shoes off, and my Mexican friends, they had the best food. We had tamales all the time, but I got to experience all those things. That was fortunate for me, and I think that made me into a better officer as I grew up, because here I am as an officer going into these communities, and you know, kind of it's like, hey, this ain't my first time in an Asian house or a Hispanic house or a black home, and
that's going to help you with interactions.
It does. It does.
Being able to understand the culture a little more.
I think so. I think it has. I felt more comfortable around a diverse group of folks, because that's all I ever knew. I didn't know anything different.
Is there any sort of training that you guys go through for? I mean, I'm sure y'all go through all kinds of training. Yeah,
cultural diversity. That's one of the top points in law enforcement, because here you are. You get some officers who, you know, to no fault of their own, they grew up in a white neighborhood, or they only grew up in an all black neighborhood or Hispanic, because that was where they grew up, you know. And I think society in the old days, like I think it's in Marlin, they always talked about one side of the tracks was black, the other side was white, and it was separated that way. That was the black side of town, this is the white side of town. For generations it was that way, and we don't tend to do that anymore. I think we're separated now more by how much money you have. So you can go to your poor neighborhoods now and you see black, Hispanic, whites all kind of mixed into one. Then your upper class neighborhoods as the same.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is more divided financially. But what about like special needs training? Do y'all have any sort of training?
Special needs training, man. Let me tell you what I just did. We had our in-service for PIOs, public information officers, and what we do, we put together a program. It's either going to be traffic safety or public safety related. My lieutenant and I out of San Antonio, we came up with interactions with responding and interacting with autistic individuals. And I have some videos that I put together on a PowerPoint on some negative experience where officers had come across somebody thinking they were on drugs, but they had autism.
Yeah.
And excuse me, I of all times to catch a cold was this week.
I think I got some cough drops. If you want.
I got some water, but I'll take one.
Yeah, I do the same thing. I got some peppermint too. I like to.
So I did my presentation, went really well, and I get to go to Omaha, Nebraska, and represent the state of Texas with all the other state agencies.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. So,
you know, that's one thing. It seems like there's more and more. It seems like people being on the autism spectrum has increased. Mm-hmm. And
well, it's a 1 in 44 chance now, as opposed to 1 in 150 in 2000.
Oh wow!
So I think the diagnosis is changed because of the research and how broad it is now. They're able to understand it and recognize it better, because some people say, oh, it's all the vaccines making the kids have autism. I think it's just easy to categorize now because the research and development has changed so much.
Yeah.
But because they have Asperger's, it's a spectrum from, you have somebody who's 20 years old, nonverbal, never spoke a word. I have at the end of my program was, I think her name is Angela Bonker she graduated with a 4.0 English major in Florida, nonverbal autistic, but she gave the valedictorian speech through a computer.
That's awesome.
I'll show you. It's fascinating.
That is super awesome.
It is. And then like Elon Musk, Jerry Seinfeld, these people who are so brilliant that they're able to harness that part of the mind that we can't.
Yeah.
They have Asperger's. So
I was telling you earlier, my wife's a special needs teacher, and they've had a few. Now, granted, they're elementary school, so they're not adults. She started working at an adult school. It was 18 to 22, I think. It was kind of like their post-high school. But she's had students in the past. I don't think that she has them anymore, but they would, I don't want to call it run away, but sneak out in the middle of the night. And they'd find them over by
that's
410. It's crazy.
90% of deaths among autistic children under 14 are attributed to drowning because they wander off.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. So that's all this stuff I didn't know this months ago, but this program I put together, it's to educate law enforcement and civilians.
Yeah.
So get that word out there.
It's fascinating because, it seems like learning about special needs it's been around forever, but it feels like the education of it is just recent.
The old days, and years ago they put them in an insane asylum and let them die. I mean, it's very sad. But my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, she's in Magnolia. She works with school. She works with severely autistic individuals that nonverbal. They have to wear diapers. I mean, they hit, they bite.
Yeah.
She does that day in, day out. And I mean, my hat's off to somebody who does that because those kids need 24/7, 7 days a week attention and care.
Yeah. My wife does a great job too. And I've heard that people at the school just love her because she does such a great job. But I tell you what, when she gets home, she's mean as hell. So maybe that's contributing.
It's got to be exhausting, and that's what my sister-in-law says. She said, "Man, she'll have bite marks and scratches, and she has. I mean, it's a physical job. She's very athletic, very strong, and she has to be because, I mean, it's a fight.
Yeah.
Technically, I mean, to no fault of those kids. I mean, they're that severe, and I mean, it's very sad, but." I'm sure the parents are grateful that people like my sister-in-law are out there to help those children while they're at school, so they can go out and perform work.
Yeah. My wife will sit there and show you your arms, and she'll show you your scars, and she'll tell you the name of the kid that gave it to you.
Yeah. Battle scars.
Battle scars. Well, you guys, I tell you what, you guys have a hell of a job. And I appreciate the things you guys do, but it seems like here lately, you guys have been swamped. I mean,
we have.
Whether it's you guys, whether it's city, whether it's sheriff's departments. We talked a little bit earlier about the Uvalde issue, or the shooting in Uvalde, and we talked a little bit about the inmate that had escaped. I guess he ended up
tragically killed. That grandpa and his four grandsons.
Was that near where he had escaped?
That was in Centerville. Well, I think he escaped. He escaped near. I can't think of the town, by Bryan College Station area.
Because they were transporting him from Houston or Dallas.
From Gatesville back to wherever the facility he was at. And for some reason, however that escaped, it's like a movie. It sounded like a movie. A prison bus, the driver is secured by a cage. There's an armed guard in the back secured by a cage. And somehow it was compromised, which that's all under investigation by TDCJ to keep that from ever happening again. But, we had troopers and hundreds of individuals on horseback looking for him. And they all thought, he's long gone in Mexico. That was my thoughts because he's cartel.
Oh, I see.
And so, they're not going to find him
here. How long was he out? 3
weeks before this murder happened.
That
he lived
long?
3 weeks, yeah.
Jeez.
And we ended up getting the shootout, or I say we, law enforcement, and was in Jordanton.
Yeah.
They killed him. He came out shooting.
Was he in a vehicle or in a house?
He stole the people's vehicle that he killed. And
oh, I see. That's great.
Yeah, very sad. He was living in this house, and I guess the people came from Tomball, and so I don't know the details of it, but I got the call. The media started calling me and asking about the escapee Gonzalo Lopez and about tied to 5 murders, and I'm like a cold case? What are you talking about? And they said, no, there'd been 5 people murdered, and they think he did. And I said, today? And I'm like, holy cow, because it's not my area, so I didn't hear about it. And then all of a sudden on my phone, the news flashes were coming up, and unfortunately, it was true. So then of course, everybody in the world's looking for him, and they're assuming now, well, he's going to Mexico now. If he can make it, he's in a vehicle. And sure enough, he got caught. But I mean, it's 5 people now dead.
That was a grandfather and grandkids.
4 grandkids, yeah.
That's terrible.
One of them, I think, just got out of high school, but yeah, and then Uvalde. That is probably that's the worst thing I've seen in my career. I wasn't there physically, but not just as an officer, but as a parent, as a citizen of Texas, you think, how did this happen? And of course, our investigation is still ongoing. Our Rangers are on it, along with the FBI and everybody else, and to see, it's to see what went wrong, if anything, and what went right. And of course, there's a lot that's going to come out of this. And I told you behind the mic that I was a baby of the Columbine generation. I was a baby cop in Killeen. I was 3 weeks into training in April and watched it on TV. It was in the briefing room and like, man, who in the heck would shoot up a school shooting, and why would they do that? And so what happened at Columbine? These kids, they planned this out and locked the doors and had devices, traps set up at the doors to keep law enforcement at bay. But what law enforcement did is what they traditionally do: surround the building and talk them out. Well, school shooters, we found out they have a manifest that when they go in, they're not coming out alive. They know this, and they're going to kill. Their job is to kill as many people as they can. And so that changed the dynamics of mass shooters and law enforcement's reaction to it. And so we started doing active shooter training right after that. And it's been very successful. And, basically the point is, and we were told, we go into groups or you go in alone. If you're the only cop there and you go into wherever you hear bang, 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 keep going until it gets louder. Go out there and eliminate that threat. Reaction is to, oh, there's a kid bleeding here. Let me drag him out. Let me drag her out. While you're dragging those 2 kids out, 20 more just got shot. Yeah. So you're trained going against nature of saving people, jumping over them, even though they're pleading for help. You got to go eliminate that threat. That's because that person is not going to stop till they're either out of ammo or you kill them.
Yeah.
There's no talking them out. And, we don't shoot the gun out of their hands. When we shoot and point a gun at somebody, that's deadly force. We shoot to stop them. Stop them. That's it. Bottom line. And gosh, that whole thing with Uvalde, that's something that I think every Texan, every American lays their head down at night and can't help but think about those families.
That's probably the worst crime you could ever commit, is to kill a kid.
Exactly. There's nothing worse, and that's what we talked off there. I've worked hundreds of fatalities in my career. I've been doing this 24 years and in law enforcement, and 16 as a trooper, and I see a lot of dead kids and had to help with load little kids into little body bags, and that was some of the hardest things I've ever done. But it's a fact of life. Car wrecks happen. We lose 10 people a day in Texas. Actually, now we're at 12 because our fatality rate's up higher, and so on average 12 people a day are dying. But it's always bothersome as an officer, and you have to see a young victim like that. It's like, man, they're only 7 or they're only 18, they're only 20. They didn't have a chance to live yet. I'm 45 years old. Hell, if I died now, I had a pretty good life. I don't want to die. I want to do another 40 and then I'll punch out. But it was always hard. So after the investigation was done, I'd have to call home and just hear my kid's voice to help me cope with it.
Yeah.
And when you're taking photographs through the picture and you're looking through that camera and filming these bodies or taking pictures of bodies when we reconstruct these crashes, and you think, man, these poor families, and then we have to go notify them. That's the worst thing you'd ever do. But going back to Uvalde, these kids died for no reason. I mean, it was such a senseless thing, and we'll never come to grips with it and make it. It's never going to just be okay. It's never going to go away. Not on my mind or not on anybody else. I wouldn't think if you accept what happened in Uvalde, then you're not right in the head, because it's something so tragic. That's our 9/11 in Texas.
Yeah.
No doubt, those little babies. So.
One thing that strikes me funny is it seems like anytime there's a large shooting like that, and I don't know if it's the media coverage or what it is, but it seems like shortly after that you end up with more, and it's almost like people who've had that, and
copycats. There's somewhere out there, and this is not the last one. There's going to be more.
Yeah.
Let's hope that we can prevent them and the best we can. But statistically, with 330 million people in this country, there's a handful of crazies out there that are going to want to do something that heinous again. Maybe they want to shoot 20 kids because the Uvalde guy only got 19.
Yeah.
So there's people out there at that mindset, and hopefully they never get to follow through with it.
Yeah,
for sure.
You know, I think that the people that have experienced things like that, you know, I couldn't imagine. I couldn't. Imagine.
You know, I know some rangers that are down there and they have to photograph that, and you know, I don't ever want to see a picture. Right before that, you know, the Buffalo shooter that. Mm-hmm. I saw a link that was sent another officer, and he's like, "Hey, you don't have to look at this, but this is we like to see the eyes through the criminal. So, how do we prevent it, or how do we confront something like this?" And I watched this guy's GoPro, or I guess he had it on his hat or something, when he stepped out of the car in Buffalo and started killing these innocent people. And I had to turn it off. And about 5 seconds in, I just couldn't handle it. You know, I just, you know, not a wuss or whatever. You don't want to see something that terrible go on. You know, it happens all over the world, but here in America, it's I don't understand why. And
well, you know, most people aren't wired that way, so to have to to watch something.
Animals don't do that. Animals kill each other for territory and food. You know, and people will kill people for joy and get pleasure out of it. You know, and cops have always been killed in the old days, in the Bonnie and Clyde days with bank robbers and stuff. But you know, law enforcement in the last couple of years, cops sitting in a red light get executed. Yeah. You know, sitting in their cars in New York get shot. People just think that's the thing to do.
There was those two officers, I think they were in California. They got shot sitting in their car, and they ended up fighting back. One lady, I think, had gotten shot in the jaw, and they ended up fighting back. But you know, I think part of what helps to be able to review photos and videos of things like that, I think the one thing is it's hard for people like you and me to understand. You know?
Because you know, you would never, you know, even if somebody came in, if I'm at a store and somebody comes in shooting. Yeah, I'm going to be the first to kill him because I carry a gun everywhere, on and off duty. And is it still going to, you know, am I going to jump around for joy? I mean, I'll be glad I've stopped the threat, but at the same time, that I had to take a life. You know, I've worked with a lot of officers in justified shootings. I've been to the shootings. I've seen the reactions of it finally sinking in. They just took another person's life. It's rough. It's something they live with the rest of their life and have to cope with, even though it's justified. You know, even though if it's justified, but. And the same with soldiers, you know, the same thing they have to go through, I'm sure. But,
oh, absolutely.
But, you know, remember October 16th, 1991, Luby's Cafeteria in Killeen. Remember that one?
Yeah.
I was across the street at the Walmart when that happened. I was a freshman in high school. We just got we had an early out. And we go down to Walmart. And as we came out, there were Army helicopters and stuff landing on the highway. And we're like, what's going on? We were looking. There was no car wrecks, but there was lights, commotion, and this was before cell phones. This is 1991. I was 14 years old, and 15 in high school, and didn't think anything of it. So we went on the AM FM radio out of Waco. It said, there was a mass shooting at the Luby's Cafeteria. And we're thinking, who would rob a Luby's? You know, but there's no money there.
Yeah.
But that was the first mass murder that I've seen firsthand. And unfortunately, my wife's boss, her mother was killed. In that, and she was a school teacher, and they just dedicated a new school in Killeen, Pat Carney Elementary. And her life was taken way too early by that coward that did that. So,
well, you know, even with the shooting in Sutherland Springs at the church, you know, it's these people go and they hit a soft target.
Soft targets, that's it.
Yeah, and I saw a video with a gentleman that chased him and shot at him. And one of the things he talked about, he said he never kept his magazines full. And he said, one of my biggest regret was that I didn't have magazines with ammo in them.
Yeah.
He said, because the time that it took me to put ammunition in the magazine, he said, I'd hear the popping of the gun, and I knew that was another friend dying. I knew it was another kid dying. And, you know, for somebody the survivor of that, you know, the guy that helped run him down, you know, he's going to live with that the rest of his life.
Yeah, my lieutenant, you know, and other PIO sergeants out of San Antonio, my office is out of San Antonio, those guys were all there. They had to witness that, and they still, because one of the sergeants, he lived in Sutherland Springs, and he lived not even a mile from that church when all that happened. But yeah, it's a mess, and, you know, and that's what we, you know, of course, it always sparks up gun control. And, you know, about 2 months ago, I was up at the school in Hamilton where my 13-year-old goes, and in front of the high school, there's a big sign. And I actually just stopped and took a picture of it because it blew my mind. I said, wow, look at this sign. It says, some of the staff at Hamilton ISD are armed and will use whatever force necessary to protect our children. And I was like, holy cow, look at that. And then I know there's some prior military teachers, some teachers that are well versed with handguns, well trained, that choose to be able to arm themselves because they don't want to be the next target.
Sure.
So I think out of this whole Uvalde thing, there's going to be of course, the conversation of the school and everything. It's all still under investigation, but we need to go, and I think there's going to be big changes with security at our schools. I mean, in my area, I cover 7 counties. There's hundreds of schools.
Sure.
Killeen is 200,000 plus people, military town, and there's a lot of kids. We have, I think there's 70, 80 elementary schools alone just in the Killeen ISD area. Yeah. And when I graduated from Ellison, it was just 2 high schools. Now we have 5. So that just shows how it's grown in 25, 30 years.
That's crazy.
It is.
It's funny because a lot of people like to look at the issue, and I think they try and look at it, and it's a multi-pronged fix. There's not a one fix, but immediately, I think people want one resolution. We need one thing to fix it. Yeah. And in my ignorant opinion, I think that when you're bleeding, the tourniquet is having security, having good guys with guns there. And now let's figure out, the mental health part. Exactly. Let's figure out the age problem.
And that's what I tell people that, with the constitutional carry, that, now a lot of people, there's some that say, well, there's going to be guns everywhere. There's going to be mass shootings in the streets.
There already are
guns everywhere. I tell people, so look, as a cop for 24 years, criminals carry guns everywhere. They don't care. They're not safe about it. They hurt people with them. I said, it's your right. And you don't have to carry a gun if you choose not to, that because you're not comfortable with it. Maybe you should go get some training and be comfortable with it, because you could save not only your life, but somebody else's. But there's some people that are just adamant against it, and that's totally their right. I'm not dogging them.
Sure.
But the one thing, people say, what's your opinion on, the Constitution to carry? Well, that's our right. However, just like a car, you're not going to hand the keys to a 12-year-old, say, drive to Dallas or drive to San Antonio. You're going to get them the training when they're 16 and, they're more responsible. So that's what I tell every gun owner or somebody who wants to get the training, know how to use it, and know how to use it in a stressful situation. Don't just shoot a few rounds and think you're an expert. Shoot regularly and be well-versed in that. And it's a tool. It's a deadly weapon. It's if used inappropriately or carelessly, it's going to hurt not only you or somebody else. Yeah. Just like a car. And it's just like a drunk driver. Get drunk and get behind the wheel. You're going to be driving that thing a whole lot different. It's just like somebody with no training and no regard for safety picking up a pistol and trying to use it. So just get the training. That's all it is. Common sense.
It's a huge responsibility.
It is.
People need to people need to understand that responsibility before they even buy one.
And especially if you have children at home, responsible gun storage, because there's, I think, 8 children across the nation every day are getting killed by guns that are not secured properly.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you something, and I probably shouldn't, because you're going to be like, oh my God.
No, tell me anything. I won't judge. I promise.
But, I was talking to you earlier, and we never had kids, so it's just me and my wife. And I don't think people know where I live, so I'll go ahead and say this, but I get shit everywhere, and we might need one here. There was a time several years ago where San Antonio had this run of home invasions, and that's scary.
Oh, there's nothing more scarier than thinking, I sleep well, but if I hear a bump outside,
sure.
I have a flashlight and gun in my drawer by the bed. I have, like I said, other places of the house, I have guns, because we don't have little ones in the running around anymore. My 13-year-old, he's well versed with guns too. He's shot, and he knows not to touch. But I remember being a kid, like 10, 11 years old, looking at my dad's office cabinet, and he had all the pistols. We didn't touch them, but we'd say, look at those guns. You got big guns in there. But what if one of my friends said, let me pick it up, and actually shot me in the face? So that's what we talk about, responsible gun ownership. But there's nothing worse. And this is what I tell people. You have your crackhead or doper that wants to break into your house, that watches you leave. They want to steal your stuff to go pawn it to buy their next fix. They're not in there to harm you. But when somebody kicks in your door at night, knows you're there in bed, they're going to do harm to you. They're either going to kill you or they're going to do some bad things to your wife. I've seen it. I've been to those calls. I've been to those terrible, terrible scenes where a female gets raped and the husband gets pistol whipped and he's bleeding or near death. And there's nothing that makes me more angry than that thought of someone, how dare you come into my house? This is the safest place on earth for my family. Yeah. And I don't care. There's no warning shots. There's no please leave, freeze, police. You come into my house and you better make yourself right with God, because you're not leaving. I mean, that's the bottom line. That should be everybody's rule, because that's your sacred place.
Sure.
You know, I don't, you know, like I said, the crackhead is going to break in the middle of the day while you're gone, wants to steal your property, you know, whatever. It's still a bad thing. You know, they could still get killed doing it. But at night, when they know you're actively in there sleeping, they're not in there to just, hey, wake up, give me your stuff. They're going to do bad things.
Yeah,
they do.
I'm not the expert at firearm training, but you know, I try and teach people basics, and one of them is even with friends that don't like guns, I like to show them, hey, this is how the gun functions. You never know when you're going to be in a position where you need to take control of the firearm and make it safe.
Exactly.
And if you can learn to make it safe, you can learn to make it unsafe. And you know, you talking about being able to use that firearm under stress. You know, there's been a couple times where we have a house alarm and it goes off in the middle of the night for weather or you know, weather storm or something. It makes it go off. And I tell you what, there's been a couple times where I've had to search the house in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning from being in a deep sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm a fat out of shape guy. My heart rate is beating, and we're walking through the house. We're checking the house. My wife has the phone, you know, in case we need to call 911, and it's stressful. And I think a lot of times people like to go to the range, they get the gun, and they shoot every 20, 30 seconds, and you know, and it's like, okay, but you need to learn to shoot under stress.
Exactly. You look at some of our videos of police officers getting into shootouts on traffic stops. The first few rounds are in the dirt because they're pulling that trigger so hard, it's pointing the gun down in the dirt, and it, you know, understandably so, because if you have somebody actively trying to kill you, I mean, that's a feeling I've been in. It's not good. You basically almost lose it in your pants, because you lose all that function of, you know, like what happens to soldiers in a battlefield. You know, they lose their bodily functions because your adrenaline and everything is going to certain parts of your body. You just, you know, urinate in your pants or defecate because that's those things are less important, and the body's like, nope, it's going up here to the brain, to the lungs, to the heart. And I've been in that position. It's scary, very scary.
I got a buddy of mine who's a firefighter, and we went shooting. We had the same birthday. We're just kind of my birthday brother, so we went shooting last November for a birthday. And he said something interesting. He was telling me how he's like, I don't know if it's the lights or what. He says, but we get in more fights with people. He says we get shot at. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a San Antonio thing.
I've always asked, you know, there's a friend of mine, Eric Walker from Killeen. He was a Killeen firefighter for many years, like 10, 12, probably 15 years. He hired on with DPS. I talked to him to become a trooper in probably, it's been, 5-6 years now. So he went from being a paramedic to seeing all this stuff going to these people's homes to a trooper side of it. And I always asked him, he talks about, he goes, yeah, at least now I get to carry a gun. He said, you know how many times I've nearly been shot or been assaulted by these people going to their homes? Because that's why they try to send an officer, but sometimes the officers aren't available. But so I said, at least one of the paramedics should be armed. Yeah. You're in a uniform. Somebody who's having a mental episode or messed up on dope, they see that uniform as authority, so they may attack you, and you have no way to defend yourself. You're coming up in lights and sirens. They recognize that as a figure of authority, even though you're there to help them. They don't see it that way. But yeah, the paramedics don't have any way to protect themselves. That's why they always say they're staging over here until the police arrive. But you know, sometimes the police just aren't that readily available. So, but yeah, in my opinion, if I was a paramedic, I would hope that at least some of the crew would be, you know, trained with a pistol and be able to carry one.
You know, the same buddy we were talking, and I don't know if it's a San Antonio thing or what, but he was saying they started a program where they're giving some firefighters tactical training. And the purpose of it was, the way he explained it to me was, if you have an active shooter situation, now you're allowed to take a firefighter in there with you armed. And while the police officers are clearing areas, he can be administering help to people who are shot. Yeah. And it's kind of a tandem deal that they're starting to do. And I don't know if it's a new program. It sounds
and that's the thing. We do that alert training, and with the clearing the school, going to the active shooter scenes. You know, we practice it by ourselves. We practice, and we do simunition rounds. We basically take our duty pistols, take the barrel out, and they're orange, and they shoot paint cartridges like a paintball. We'll go to an elementary school on a Saturday, and we have guys with blank pistols. We get the call. We have actors playing that they're injured in the hallway, and then you hear bam, bam, bam in the back hallway. And let me tell you about some realistic training. And you're running toward that, and you have actors screaming, coming out, running, pushing you, and trying to get out of your way while you're actively trying to go to that bang, bang, bang. And then you enter the room and you take them out. And sometimes you get hit, sometimes you get hit right in the face mask. And that's how I told you off the air. I was in Arlington training with the SWAT team June 6, 2001. And then we did all the classroom portion first. And the SWAT members had their simunition pistols. Well, we went to lunch. Well, guess what? We're leaving the controlled environment, so now they have to rearm their pistols. And we went to lunch, had barbecue, and came back. Well, we all meticulously lined up. They took our guns, locked them up, gave us their guns with the simunition barrels in it, except the lead instructor after lunch, he didn't change his barrel out. There's a live round in that barrel. So we're lined up on this wall, and they have this helmet. It looks like paintball helmet. It's basically paintball gear. You have a throat protector, a big helmet with a plastic shield to where you can see. And they wanted to show us what it looked like when you get hit with one. So one guy grabbed the shotgun. This guy, Joey Cushman, he put the helmet on, stood up against this pole and there by the office. The guy with the shotgun shot and missed, hit above him. Well, the other sergeant that worked there in the SWAT team, his friend, said, no, this is what it's supposed to look like. He pulls his pistol out, didn't change the barrel out, points it at him and shoots him right in the head and kills him right in front of us. And I saw the blast. The shell landed at my feet. Joey Cushman fell back. As he fell back, the helmet came off and he smacked the back of his head on the floor. And I thought, I was trying to process this because we're in a training environment. So I'm thinking, these guys are screwing around trying to get our blood level up, but that dude just got hurt because he smacked the back of his head on that concrete floor. But then I looked at the reaction of the guy that did it, and it was just pure chaos after that because he was dead forever at the ground, a training accident. So that was my experience with active shooter training in 2001. And then it was very hard for me to go back and finish it because I wanted to finish it. We had to finish it to be trained in it. But you talk about when I put that helmet on, to think I didn't have any flashbacks to that day. And, went to the guy's funeral. A lot of people got fired out of it. But that guy, I don't know if he'll ever be the same. Of course, he's not going to be the same. He killed his best friend on accident. But that just goes to show, they were doing this all week long because it was on Fox News Dallas. They were showing that they're training these departments. And I told my ex-wife at the time, and she was pregnant with my son who's in the military. And I said, I'll be going there tomorrow. It's going to be cool. And she even said, I have a bad feeling about this. I was like, what are you talking about? I was pregnant hormone. She's like big pregnant, about to have the baby. And I thought it was just her pregnant hormone, but she knew something wasn't going to be right. And I remember after that happened, we tried to render first aid, but there was nothing we could do. And then at the same time, the guy that shot him, we had to tend to him because he's a screaming mess. Just imagine. I mean, we're thinking he was going to shoot himself. I mean, the potential's there. You just shot your buddy on accident. Yeah. So he's losing his mind. But yeah, tragic all the way around. But I completed the training, and all of our troopers are trained in it, and to go in there and eliminate that threat. And I think that's going to be a big thing now for every department, to make sure everybody's trained properly. And because there's going to be more. After Santa Fe, Governor Abbott said, hey, we got 3,000 troopers out there. Let's do it a part of your couple times a week. Just go into a school and walk around. So we started doing that, and to have a big presence in these schools, to think that if some kid is out there thinking, I'm going to shoot up the school, but all these dang troopers are in and out of here, I better not, maybe be a deterrent. Yeah. Because what's more important than our kids? We put our lives on the line for everybody, but every person, grown adult, should put their life on the line for, especially a child. Sure. That's they're precious, and they're just getting started in life. It's terrible when you see one go, but yeah, it's a crazy world we're in. These times are hard. It's hard on everybody, law enforcement and civilians alike. So going back to active shooters, school shootings, I think now that we have the alert system, the Amber Alert, the Silver Alert. Now we have the school shooter alert that's going to come on your phone like the Amber Alerts do. It'll tone off, say it's like a 50 mile, or no, I think it's a 3 or 5 mile radius of that active shooter, and it's going to send off an alarm. But I'm telling you right now, if there's a school shooter alert, how many armed civilians are going to go in and do the part? And as they should, in my opinion. Everybody's able to stop that threat, especially any law-abiding gun-carrying individual. The thing about carrying a gun on school property goes out the window when someone's in there killing innocent children. So if I think we're going to see the next one, unfortunately there will be, I think that next school shooting, you're going to see civilians just arm up and go in if they beat the officers there. Because sometimes the officers could be minutes away. You may have somebody at that corner and see it go on and go in there and do what needs to be done.
Well, let me ask you that, because that was one thing I was thinking, after Uvalde, I get that it's still under investigation, but there's a lot of things that don't look like they were done well, and so there's a lot of, and it rightly so, really passionate people about it, and so after watching the news and seeing things going on, and I forget the chief, Stephen McCraw, when he had his,
director,
he had his time in front of the news. First thing I think is next time, because there will be, and this is the thing, is people say, well, how do we stop it? And I don't know that you can.
You're never going to stop evil.
No.
There's no amount of laws that's going to stop evil. There's 20,000 gun laws on the books right now. You can do 50,000, 100,000. You're not going to stop bad people from using a tool. Look over in France when they drive a truck through the crowd. It hurt 200 people. The machete attacks in London, the machete attacks on the subways in China. I mean, evil is going to do whatever they can to do what they do, and that's to hurt and harm and kill people. So we just have to make it less easy for them with making these soft targets. I mean, nursing homes, what better place to go in there? That's been brought up because those people can't get out and run. A lot of them are bound to that bed. Yeah. And that's something that's been discussed, and security measures, but it's definitely changing things at the schools, because you look at every school that we go to, the front doors are maybe metal, but the inside ones are glass. And the metal ones are not locked. So when you open the first ones, you have to get buzzed through the glass doors. Yeah. You could shoot your way through a glass door. So I think all that's going to be changed, not to mention the first floor windows. I mean, are they going to make them all bulletproof? I don't know.
There's a lot of...
Because then if you have bulletproof windows, you can't break out in case of a fire. It becomes a fire hazard. So they got to remember, these people, like, this should be one way in, one way out. What if there's a fire?
Yeah.
Or what if there is an active shooter, he gets in, where the kid's going to run to? They have to have an escape. So there's so many things on the table. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And
one thing that I would love to see is, we talked about it earlier, but having more armed security. But at the same time, I work in the engineering industry, and there's building management systems that they put in larger buildings and even courthouses, and somebody monitors doors and windows and what's open, what's been open for how long, and it's like, I think that if we're going to invest money, which everything costs money, that's usually the issue. That's where I would also like to see money spent, in the school districts, is being able to monitor the doors and being able to take, hey, somebody left a door open. Send somebody over there and close that door.
And I think when we went to school, you can go through any door 24 during school hours. I think they locked them. The janitors locked them at 6 o'clock when they went home. But at my elementary school in Killeen, you could just walk in, walk out. There was no security measures, but that was before Columbine. That was before this world. I mean, the first school shooting was the one at the UT Tower. That was way before its time. That was like a holy cow moment. This guy's shooting from the clock tower, and I forget how many people he killed, but that was in the 50s, I believe, late 50s, early 60s. And then there wasn't, I mean, there may have been some shootings with people fighting at schools, whatever, but I remember at Ellison, my high school in Killeen, sitting in science, there's some screaming going on in the hallway, and there wasn't a friend of mine, he was a classmate, I knew who he was walking down the hall with a pistol in his hand, chasing his girlfriend. And I was like, holy cow, he's got a gun. And remember, we had KISD has their own police department, but it's not very big. It's, for amount of schools they have, the officer may be 20 minutes across town at another campus.
Yeah. But there was an architect, I don't know his name, but I want to say it was in the 60s and 70s. And he came out with this public school layout, and we used to have it back home in George West. They've redone a lot of the schools or school buildings. The high school's been renovated and changed. But when I was in high school there, and you'll see them everywhere in small towns. So they're little one-story buildings with glass windows across this whole long wall with all the classrooms there. And there was a certain architect that came up with that style, and they just adopted it. Yeah. And so you go to all these towns and all the little schools, they all look the same because they were designed that way.
You could drive by them and look into the classrooms.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, see all the little heads, in the desk.
Yeah, so with that, it's like, like we talked about earlier, to me, the first thing to do is let's provide security.
Yeah.
Now let's reevaluate how we do everything else.
Exactly. You know, you have to, and what's great is I do a lot of programs at school about distracted driving, DWIs, like prom weekends and stuff. We go in there and show PowerPoints and videos and PSAs, and it's pretty entertaining. We don't kill them by PowerPoint. Just tell them, don't do this, don't do that. It's geared for them. It's geared toward them, and it works really. It's effective. And I've go to these schools, and like in Belton where I live, the high school, I'm in uniform, had my little computer bag. I showed up. I left my wallet in the car. She said, I need your ID. I said, it's in the car. She goes, yeah, I have to go get it. And she goes, I'm sorry. I said, don't be. I said, anybody could make a fake police uniform and show up. And I said, by all means, always check ID. I said, no, I'm not embarrassed. I said, it's my fault. I usually keep it in my uniform, but it was in my wallet. And I went back and got it, and they scan it and make the sticker with your face on it with your ID. And I said, yeah, you can get a police badge and a patch on eBay, put it on a black shirt, carry a gun, walk into school. If they just think, oh, he's a cop, I'm just going to let him in. Yeah, that's always check ID. And that's what we tell people who, there's been times at night we're in an isolated area in the middle of nowhere where we stop somebody and they don't pull over. They turn their flashers on. They call 911 and say, hey, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I'm a female. I'm scared. Is this a real officer? And then they say, hey, are you about to stop somebody? I said, yeah. And because there's been cases, especially in Georgetown where I worked, I was a trooper there. There's a man, you could buy red and blue lights, put it on a car. You could start stopping cars. And he was stopping females, chasing them down or stalking them and stopping them, trying to get their information. And, that happens all over the country, to sexually assault these women. Yeah.
I think one of the bad things we do as a public is we get complacent with things.
Exactly. And that's human nature. And that's, as a training officer, say I may stop 2,000 cars a year and not get into one fight. So at 2001, that guy's going to come out and start swinging. Was I expecting that? Heck no, because I got complacent. So and it's always good to train a newbie, because it puts me back into training mode, thinking, yeah, I'm alive for a reason, because I've always been careful. And it's a reminder to not get complacent and say, I'm going to stop one more car, then I'm going to go home and eat dinner. But that one car could be the guy who just escaped from prison, is on his way to Mexico or wherever on the run, and he comes out shooting. So you always got to be ready. And that's what I tell people. This line of work, you have to be on your game 100% of the time, because there's people out there that'll step on you like a bug and have no regards for your life, because you're the one thing that keeps them from going to prison or getting caught because they just committed some terrible, terrible crime.
Yeah, they're desperate to get away.
They are.
One thing that I used to ride motorcycles. I have carpal tunnel, so I don't do it anymore. But when I rode motorcycles, I was a very safe driver. That was probably the safest I've ever been. And since I've been carrying a firearm, I'm the nicest I've ever been. Now, let me ask you this. One thing that when I reached out to you initially, I wanted to talk to you about was from time to time, it doesn't happen very often, but you would see where somebody would use their firearm in self-defense. And then the cops would show up, and the guy would get shot, because it's hard to tell. And even with the school shootings, we're talking about people showing up with guns. That starts to complicate things when law enforcement shows up, and it's kind of like, okay, well, who's a good guy, who's a bad guy?
Exactly.
So what is
that does come up? That's where good witnesses come into play, when it's going to be pure chaos. When there's like a mall shooting, and say I'm in my shorts and flip flops, and I have my little Glock in my pocket, and I'm over there shooting the guy, and he's laying there dead, and the police are coming in, and they take me out because I match the description. It was a tall white male with a gun. All of a sudden, they think it's me, and I didn't see him come in and get to identify myself, who I am. So one of the LTC instructors that has a radio show up north of here, and where I'm from, he carries looks like a police badge, but it says I'm a concealed carry instructor. He carries on a chain under his shirt. He said, for the only reason of, if I'm in a mall or get into a shooting, the police show up, I'm going to pull this out and I'm going to hold it, let them know I'm a good guy. And he hopes it works. And that's kind of his thoughts on it. So witnesses are going to have to describe that. That's why these 911 operators try to get the description. Tall, white male, beard, no beard. What's he wearing? We need to know what he's wearing, because we know that there's a chance that there's other people out there with firearms that could be out there in the firefight. Yeah. And as an officer, you're hauling butt to get there. Lights and sirens and that stress, you're thinking, okay, who has the gun? The Fort Hood shootings, I was at both of them. I was in Hamilton on Highway 36, about 40 minutes from Fort Hood, when they said over the radio, get to Fort Hood, there's a mass shooting, an active shooter. And they said the suspect, at the time it came out, 4 suspects all wearing military fatigues. Well, hell, 50,000 other people are too. How do I know which one is which? And so by the time I got there, it had just already stopped. He got shot, and he was already on his way to the hospital. And they said, for good reason, that he was deceased on scene, because you'd have had 100,000 soldiers beating down the hospital door to cut his throat. I guarantee it. And that coward, he lived and got tried, and he's living in a wheelchair and in prison. But that was another one. Then the second one, I was there as well, and he was shot by an officer, and I think it was self-inflicted on the second one. Yeah, it was November of 2009 was that first one with that major. I won't even say his name.
Yeah,
never mention their names. Yeah,
I remember. You know, that's one thing that I'm a fan of, is not saying their names. But
exactly.
I think it's important that people understand that person is a terrible person.
Yeah, cowards. I mean, that's the lowest form of scum on the earth, and that's why they should be labeled, because they are. You're going to do something like that, you're the biggest piece of garbage that ever walked this earth. And, you know, sorry, that's not my opinion. I think that's everybody's opinion, because if you start, you know, that's where the media and everybody said, hey, you know, maybe we should quit. You know, they say his name once, they eventually identify him, but then never mention it again, because they don't want a copycat saying, well, I want my name to be out there. I want to be on the news every time it comes on. I want my picture up there. I want to be glorified.
Yeah.
And have that. So I think that's what they've done. Now this one in Uvalde, I've seen his face on the news a lot, you know, and I hate to see it. I don't like that. It's different.
Let me ask you some more about the concealed carry thing. You know, when you guys show up on the scene, I'm sure you're giving directives to people, and it's important for a citizen who's carrying and has used their firearm to comply. Yeah. You know. But what else can people do to kind of, because I would imagine there's a point there when law enforcement is showing up, you still have your gun, maybe the threat's been neutralized, but you don't know if there's a secondary threat. Yeah. You know, so you don't necessarily, because sometimes I think, well, maybe I'll just, you know, take the ammo out of my gun, open it up and put it down and be done. You know, but if there's a secondary threat in the
you know, and that's the thing. You can, you know, you never know. You play these scenarios in your head as a civilian and as officers we do. You know, we want to get the best description, and what if that one person with the gun, they didn't get that description out there? Of course, we're going to engage them and say, hey, let me see. I mean, if they're facing away, if they're at an angle, we're going to say, hey, police, drop the gun. And they see us, they're going to comply because they're the good guy. And but yeah, it's going to be a very hairy moment. Yeah. It's very touch and go, because it could go either way. You know, what if they hear the doors open, the cavalry of police come in, they turn and blade us with the gun, and there's no drop the gun, the bullets are going to be flying, and let's hope that never happens, but it could very well happen, go south. So just, you know, that you can, as a gun carrier or a civilian, you need to go through your head and train yourself saying, okay, what if, because you probably like me, you sit when you go into a restaurant with facing the front door.
Oh, absolutely.
You know where the rear exit is. You know, my wife knows. I said, if somebody comes in, if I say get out, you get out this door, and you're gonna hear some banging. I'm gonna shoot, because I'm always ready, especially at restaurants. You know, the whole Luby's thing, that put that scenario on the map.
Yeah.
And every time we go somewhere, I'm always, you know, I asked the waitress too, is this okay? No, and like, can I sit over here? Yeah. Because I could see the front door, and she gets it or he gets it. They know. You know, it doesn't mean I'm a cop. It just means I'm somebody who's cognizant of my surroundings. Because be surprised, a lot of people aren't. Yeah. You know, and because we have this great society in the USA that is not crime free, but it's not as bad as some countries in the world. And you know, they get complacent living in a good area and never having to worry about crime. But when you look at all these mass shootings, Santa Fe, Parkland, Killeen, no one ever heard of those towns. Uvalde, no one's ever heard of those towns around the country. Like, we're all these places, but that's unfortunately how they're getting recognized, is because these mass shootings, they happen everywhere and anywhere.
Yeah. And you know, I think that's the other important thing is you know, when we heard about the Uvalde shooting, it was, I took pause because, like you said earlier, it was like, who's shooting in Uvalde?
We used to stay there in hotels. When we worked the border, we'd stay in Uvalde, and we'd hang out there, and then we would drive south to go work our shift. But I was like, man, Uvalde, that's where Matthew McConaughey's from. You know, that's how I knew it. Yeah, and that's where my sister-in-law was born.
Oh, really?
In Uvalde.
And, you know, it literally, you know, for people that don't know that area, it's small town Texas. Mm-hmm. You know,
very close community. I mean, like I said, it's majority Hispanic community, and generations have been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And they're very close knit, and that's why, I mean, the good thing about this community is that they're able to lean on each other through this mess, because I couldn't imagine. I mean, you'll never be able to sit there and grasp it. I still think, man, did this really happen? Did it really happen? I mean, gosh, it really happened. That's pure hell on earth. And you wish you could just go back in time and not make it happen.
Yeah.
But we can't. So just got to prevent it from happening again the best we can, and just God, hope and pray for those families could go through the rest of their life and somewhat normal, because it's not going to be a normal life for them.
Sure.
The trauma, that amount of trauma, one alone, if it was someone killed one child in that school, that's trauma, but magnified so much. And then the 2 adults as well. And that teacher's husband died of a broken heart, literally.
Yeah.
Literally died of a broken heart.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, makes you, yeah.
Makes you sick to your stomach.
Yeah, it does. It's just, it's hard to even fathom that kind of pain, suffering. It's hard, but yeah, always think about those people in Uvalde. Always will.
Let me ask you this, change gears a little bit, but what is y'all's role currently with the border?
The Operation Lone Star is still in effect. It's...
Let me just tell you, and I hate to swear in front of you, but...
Go ahead. I mean...
y'all's riverboats are pretty badass.
I got to do that. I got to spend some time on those. I spent my 40th birthday on one of those things.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah, I was down there for 2 weeks, and I got trained up on the M240 Bravo, and it was a lot of fun. Those boats are really effective. They're
There's
great.
like 32 motors on the back of that.
There's three 300 horsepower.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
They'll do 72 miles an hour. They are considered a yacht because the hull is above 60 feet or longer 60 feet. They can go, I think, in low as 18 inches of water. And, when I first started this, it was like 102 degrees. We'd go down there, and I was working the 6P to 6A shift. And they said, and we have these long sleeves and jackets they bring, like, you're going to need it at night. I'm like, yeah, right, whatever. I'm telling you, 3 a.m. on the Rio Grande River at 40 to 60 miles an hour, you're freezing your butt off.
Yeah.
You're freezing. And I thought, how did it go from 100 degrees to this on the water? Because the temperature in that river, so it changes so much. But the drugs and the amount that come across at night, they have a little rafts with the ropes. They pull them across. We'd cut the ropes, cut up the rafts. They're throwing rocks and everything at us. And but yeah, it's a very effective tool in deterring the drug trade. But this whole thing with the border, I talked earlier about, we average about 3,600 to 3,700 deaths a year on our Texas highways. Last year was our busiest. It was 4,400 deaths plus 44 and some change. It's gone up almost 800 deaths. And that's attributed to, we have about 800 to 1,000 troopers down the border. And the majority of them down there are not supposed to be there, but they're there supporting that mission because the federal government's not doing their job. And I'm not making it political. It's a proven fact.
Sure.
They've incentivized illegal immigration. So along with that comes, we talked off there about the people who come over here to work. That's fine and dandy. It's been that way for generations. But we talk about the human trafficking, talk about the fentanyl and the drugs coming across right now. And they're hiding in plain sight because they're with these caravans, these groups, and the Border Patrol is so overwhelmed. Everything's just coming right in. It's wide open. And nobody's being checked for backgrounds. You have no idea. And like I said, when I work down there, I've stopped people from Poland, China, Afghanistan, South America. Everyone thinks border, they think Mexico. No. I mean, it's
amazing that these people will fly there from other countries.
Yeah.
Like you said, Afghanistan and Poland, and they're coming across because it's that easy to come across.
And, not to make light of it, but I joked with my mom. She couldn't fly in last year because the restriction was until November 8th. Well, November 6th, my nephew made Eagle Scout, and my mom wanted to come fly to see it. Well, she couldn't come for another 2 days, so she missed it. I said, Mom, tell you what, you fly to Mexico City, caravan to the border, and you can walk right in. I'll pick you up. It's that. Unfortunately, it is that easy.
It's terrible.
It is, and the locals down there, it's taken a toll on them and their communities. The crime, is skyrocketing, and then these people are being dispersed all over the country in the middle of the night on flights. They're given cash with no IDs. They're getting on airplanes, and they're being sent all over the country. Let's hide them in plain sight. So. Who these people are, we don't know. Sure, a lot of people, if I was down there, I'd want to come here too for a better life and to make money. But at the same time, there's a way to do that.
My wife and I both have family down in the valley. and we went down there, I guess maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month ago. And I kind of was taken back because typically from when you get to, let's say, Rivera to Raymondville, you would see Border Patrol trucks all the way down there. And this time, everywhere that you would see Border Patrol, it was DPS. And so I'm a fan of that because I'll be honest with you, I'm not trying to break any laws.
Yeah.
So to me, more law enforcement anywhere is better.
Exactly.
But at the same time, it kind of dawned on me the reason DPS was there. I mean, yes, DPS was there was because Border Patrol's processing. They're not able to be at their stations and being able to do the job that they normally do.
And then, like I talked about the ripple effect, our fatalities going up. These troopers who normally are taking in 2, 3, 4 drunks a week, they're not. Those drunk drivers are killing other people. They're killing themselves. We're not apprehending these dangerous criminals out on our highways. We're back in our home areas like Amarillo, El Paso, Dallas, Austin, Belton, where I live, Killeen, East Texas. These criminals are not getting put in jail because they're not getting stopped by the troopers. That's what we tell people. Every criminal, the majority of them get how they ended up in prison. You ask them, well, it was a traffic stop or they came pick me up. But a lot of them are picked up on traffic stops because they all travel by car.
Yeah.
I mean, who wants to walk or ride a bike? So that's where we come in our criminal interdiction, just do our daily traffic. We stop someone for speeding, no front plate or seatbelt, stop them when they have a murder warrant or, child sexual assault warrant, and we put them in jail.
I was talking to someone the other day who's with the Border Patrol, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. He was telling me that he was saying the frustrating thing is cartels are getting people across the border. We're picking them up, and we're literally taking them to the next station where the cartels are picking them back up, whether it's in Dallas or Houston. And he even made mention that, and I don't know if it's going to change or anything, but they aren't allowed to arrest or confiscate an Uber vehicle. He said, so there's people calling Uber
Really?
to take them from the Valley to Dallas,
Wow.
to Valley to Houston.
That's a bill, ain't it? but
They're paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, criminals are we call them evil geniuses. Some of them are so brilliant. If they'd have just been law-abiding citizens, they could have been millionaires in the civilian world. But because they're such a organized, they're smart, they have leadership, they have this criminal enterprise put so together that it could be, man, if this wasn't, of course, it's a drug trade. We have such a tenacious appetite for drugs on this side of the border that there's always going to be business. But man, it's well ran like any Fortune 500 company, and the drug trade, and that's where you've seen like, El Chapo and all them. Look at the money they had, and it's crazy. And then how he escaped out of the jail on a motorcycle in a well-ventilated tunnel under the ground. That's like a movie, but no, that really happened.
It's funny. I think even with Escobar, and this was back. It's more.
But wasn't he the richest man in the world at one point?
He was
in the
making
world
like $68 million a day.
Yeah, I think he surpassed somebody in Saudi Arabia at one point. His wealth was higher.
Yeah,
that's insane. That's insane.
That whole deal it's a terrible cancer. And one thing that worries me, being from South Texas, we mentioned about bailouts and illegals, and we talked about, I was telling you my concern is that Joe Blow citizen is going to have to defend himself and put himself in a situation that he probably wouldn't have had to if we allowed law enforcement to do their job.
Yeah.
But one thing and I don't know everything, but from what I'm paying attention to and what I can see, you've got all these cartels in Mexico that, still fight, kill each other, moving drugs, but they're starting to legitimize their businesses and they're buying hotels and resorts. And so slowly that cancer is going to creep. It's already in the United States.
Yeah, it's on this side. There's a lot of it. I mean, it's, like I said, the more I've learned about them in the last 15 years, it's like, wow, it's so complex. And, and then, of course, your politicians are paid off down the Mexico side, because if not, you get a new mayor or somebody, or police chief, and those little small Mexico substations on the Mexico side of the border. They come in, try to do stuff, the cartel, they come in, shoot up the police station. Yeah. They kill them right away. You try to be a hero down there as a cop, whatever, you're going to get killed, or your family will.
That's the concern I have with it leaching its way this way, is all those things that were a Mexico issue. they're starting to legitimize in Mexico. It'll still be an issue there, but eventually it's going to become that issue here. And you're going to start having politicians and law enforcement who either become corrupt or get killed.
Yeah.
And it's just going to make its way up.
The stories I've heard over the years about law enforcement and sheriffs along the border that, that they're not running anything, the cartels are, and they get threatened if you try to stop us. We know where so and so junior goes to school at this elementary. We know his teacher. We know what your wife drives and where she works. What's that going to do to your head?
Yeah.
If somebody said that to me, like, holy cow, I'd be scared for my family big time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have a job to do. But how's you going to feel when you come home and your whole family's massacred, and they let you live because they want you to live with that?
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't play around. There's no different than Al Qaeda. They have no regard for human life. They'll kill your kids just to make a point.
And I think that's part of what's so frustrating about what's going on the border today is it's literally, can you stop it completely? Probably not. But you've actually just emboldened it. You've made it easier for them to operate in the States. And they're here, and it's
all about the policies.
Worse.
Like I said, whoever is president, I want them to be successful. Even though I may not have voted for them, I want them to be successful because they're my president of my country. So I want them to do good. But it's up to the politicians on both sides to do the right thing and enforce the laws that are on the books.
Yeah.
To keep the government's job is to keep the citizens safe by providing an army, secure borders, and allowing us to have our rights to defend ourselves and voice our opinions. People have the freedom of speech. We may not like some things they say, but someone can come up to me and cuss me out all day long in this uniform. Nothing I can do about it. That's their right.
Yeah.
I can't get offended as an officer. They can scream at me all day long, but you can't lay hand on us. But it's people don't realize that you as a civilian, someone can come up and cuss you out, get offended, and they could be charged for disorderly conduct, but not us. So, and it comes with the territory. It comes with being a representative of the state and law enforcement. But and generally the majority, it's 98% of the people are good out there. Is that 2% that are pure evil that'll hurt you or kill you? It's a lot of people make bad choices. Drunk drivers, the majority of the time, they just made a bad choice. They're good people, hardworking. They made a bad choice. They drank too much, got behind the wheel, and they're a danger to society. So, I've taken hundreds of people to jail over my career, and I always talk to them when they're in the car, trying to get their stories. Hey, so where are you from? What's this and that? Sometimes they'll talk. Sometimes they're like, screw you. I ain't going to talk to you. But I just want to know how they got in that position because what's to say I couldn't have ended up like them.
Well, it also helps you
and
understand.
the majority is drugs and alcohol at a young age or some form of abuse they've encountered. It's ruined their life and they took to crime.
Yeah.
So that's what we're seeing. That's what I've found personally a lot with some people I've taken to jail.
One thing I wanted to talk to you about also was fentanyl. Are y'all seeing more and more of that coming
Just
across?
on the way here, I heard on the news they got 20-something pounds out of a car down at the border, and that's enough to kill, I think they said 30 million people, everyone in Texas.
I don't understand.
If you take the tip of your pen and to put it in perspective, that little dot that I just pulled out of the pen, less than that much fentanyl could kill a human being, a guy's our size.
Yeah.
And there's enough fentanyl that they've seized. I don't have the stats off the top of my head, but I just heard these the other day that what we've seen so far in the last couple of years, the border's enough to kill everybody in the country, 330 million people. So what's happening is these drugs are coming
from China?
in. That's being made cheaply down and below our border. Yeah,
okay.
It's very easily made. It's inexpensive and it's so deadly. And the way they're manufacturing these, like these fake pills, and they had experts at our crime lab. They have a fake pill like OxyContin or whatever it is, then next to a real one. Even the people at the lab and physicians can't tell them apart. They're made that well. Yeah. And so these young people, we do safety education in these schools. Say, hey, just because you think it's XYZ pill, don't ever trust it because it's not coming from a doctor. You don't take it, but they're buying them from other kids and drug dealers, and they're taking these pills and boom, they're dead. And
they're using it to lace other drugs, right?
Yeah, they're even marijuana. They're lacing some marijuana. I mean, that's playing Russian roulette easily with your life, and they'll never understand it. But it's anybody can look online right now what the fentanyl death rate is in the United States, and they have the stats, and it's alarming how high it is just in the last 3-4 years.
Yeah.
In years past, if we on a traffic stop, if we came across a white substance we thought was cocaine or something, we were able to have field test kits. We can get put on some rubber gloves, get a toothpick, put it in the field test kit, shake it up, and put it on the hood of the car and watch it turn purple, and it'll show you which drug it is, or even meth. We used to field test that. We don't touch anything anymore because we could touch a little bit of it, and it can go either through that glove. If there's a tiny little porous hole, it'll get in our system and kill us.
So how do y'all handle that whenever you're encountering it in the streets?
Just you don't touch it. I mean,
does somebody else come in and remove it? Like, let's say if there's a bag in a car or something, you're gonna.
If we see any white substance already bagged, we triple bag it, tape it up, send it to a lab. It's labeled, and they, under the proper environment, they put it in the box with the gloves and open it up and test it. We don't field test anything anymore. Just let the lab do it.
Do y'all have some sort of face covering? Because it's my understanding, even breathing it in.
Breathing it in, yeah. I mean, your lungs it gets in your lungs, you're dead. So it's very dangerous. And I mean, who comes up with this kind of stuff? I mean, how do they think? Yeah, I'm going to put this in my body.
Well, I had read something a long time ago because I got super interested in it because I didn't understand it. And I want to say some of the things that I read, some of the articles I read, they were using it on cancer patients. I guess they would put it in a patch, and they could put the patch on a cancer patient.
Yeah, and I guess it's like morphine. I mean,
yeah, it was like a
similar
replacement
effects.
too, I guess.
Yeah.
But now I guess the cartels got a hold of it, and they, we can use this little bitty amount.
Yeah, and they say you're like instantly addicted to it. Once your body needs it, your body's going to go into withdrawals within minutes after that dose is worn off to want more and crave more.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it is. It's a sad thing. Lives of, I watched in the early 2000s the meth culture where I was up in the Stephenville area. That was a big thing, torn a lot of families apart. And back then you could tell the meth users, the first thing that went was their teeth, because when they smoked it, it just ate the enamel off their teeth immediately, and everything just fell out. And they may be 25, they looked 55 years old. It aged them so rapidly, and that was one of the telltale signs between the weight loss. So when we'd stop somebody and you're talking to them, and you could tell their mannerisms, and you get to talking and you end up doing a vehicle search, and you find all the meth. It was real prevalent in the early 2000s. The marijuana thing, that's everywhere now. I mean, I think it'll eventually be legalized one day here. It is halfway across the country in some states now, and I forget how many of it legalized. But until then, it's people ask our opinion. I'm like, well, I'm not going to give my opinion on it. But when it's not legal, then you won't go to jail for it. But as long as it's still on the books and it's enforceable, you'll be arrested for marijuana. But when we were younger, there was like a handful of kids that smoked it. But now it's like
they had the Metallica jacket behind the dumpster.
I know. But now I think 80-90% of kids have tried it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like us trying alcohol back in the old days when we were teenagers. It was everybody did it back then. Now it's less alcohol, more marijuana.
Yeah.
So it's.
I think there's a lot of. I think in part there's a lot of we talked about off the microphone earlier about just the stresses people are enduring these days. It's like a constant bombardment of crisis to next crisis to the next crisis. So I think people are looking for something to kind of deaden that stress. But I saw we don't have cable, we have Sling and some other stuff. But I was watching Sling, and it was funny because there was a commercial that came on, and they're at a party, a bunch of younger people, and the guy walks up to the camera and he says, "Hey, smoking pot and driving is illegal. Don't do it." And I remember going, currently, pot is illegal.
Yeah. I've seen the PSAs for marijuana, and the billboards now for smoking marijuana is the same as being intoxicated, because DWI, the definition of intoxication is introduction of any substance where you lose the mental and physical faculties of your body. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be prescription drugs. It could be any substance, or it's 0.08 of alcohol. There's two sides to that definition for our legal part, for the definition of intoxication. But yeah, you can take any, that's why it says on these prescription bottles, do not operate heavy machinery or drive a car. So don't go out in your bulldozer driving around, using it. But there's reasons that we've stopped people, and they're taking their legal prescribed pills, but they're still DWI because they're all over the road. They're not supposed to be driving. So
I understand.
I've had a few of those in my career.
How are we doing with the cell phone stuff?
The cell phone.
People stopping? Did they stop texting and driving?
No, it's gotten so bad to where I literally will be almost daily on that going down the highway, and I'm behind a car. You see them jerk to the left, jerk to the right, slow down, speed up, all the characteristics of a drunk driver. But they're on their phone. You pull up next to them and they're over there on their phone. I've seen them have tablets on steering wheels.
Wow.
And so we stop them. You know, it is against the law now to receive or send electronic messages, but it's not illegal. And this is where people will say, well, it was on my GPS thing. Yeah, it's not illegal, but is it any safer? I mean, you can get killed typing in something on your GPS. So we always tell people, you know, if your phone ring, even just talking on the phone's a distraction, but we all do it, but it's not illegal unless you're in a school zone. Try to use the hands-free, or if you have to make a phone call, pull over to the side of the road, safe spot, return that text. And, you know, we always joke around. If you're at a red light, if you're the third car at the red light, you can't touch your phone. You know why? Because you have to watch the light turn green, so you have to honk your horn at everybody to get off their phone. It's time to go.
Yeah.
Because you look at a red light, everybody's down on their phone.
I'm usually the honker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody checks their messages or something. But now that we're seeing now, and the big problem is, you know, I didn't get my first cell phone till 2004, probably 2003, 4. So I was I was an officer in my 20s. And I remember when dispatch had a call for us that they really didn't want to put on the radio, so Scannerland didn't listen to it. They said, can you public service dispatch, meaning call them? So we'd go to the Holiday Inn. Hey, can I use your phone? Go to behind the counter and call them. And they would tell us information over the phone. But then we got cell phones for the patrol cars. But this generation that has been, since the last 10 years, they've had cell phones since they're 8, 9, 10 years old. Yeah. So now you put them behind the wheel of a car. It's hard. It's almost impossible for them to quit looking at them, because that's become another appendage to their body.
Yeah.
So these kids, they're driving and they're always on their phone because that's all they've known since they were 10 years old. It's become a habit. So to stress the importance of them, and that's, you know, distracted driving is one of the number one killers of these young drivers right now, because they're on their phones.
You know, one of the things that's caught my eye recently is my buddy's got a truck that has one, and like the Teslas have them, but they have this massive monitor on the dashboard, and they've got apps in there. You know,
it's a big Spotify. Cell phone size of this computer, but you know, it's against the law to have a TV screen and within the driver's view.
Yes,
in the Texas law, but you could have this Tesla thing. Which a Tesla, will it drive itself? I don't know. You see all those terrible. I think the Tesla's great. It's a great innovation. But I think people, if they trust that thing to drive you and itself, you see the people on the news where they fell asleep and they're going down the road, and it's still in autopilot, I guess. I don't know. That's scary. I mean, we're going to have self-driving vehicles one day, I'm sure. But, you know, it's still technology. It can go wrong, and it's still in the works. But always be in control. If you're driving a Tesla, make sure you're the one driving. Don't let the computer do it.
Yeah. And I think that's what's important is people think, you know, they get advertised this technology, whether it's with their phone being hands-free or whether it's in the car. My buddy's got a Dodge truck that has this massive monitor.
The new ones, yeah. It's
and so
24-inch screen.
People take for granted that thing's not going to fail. And it's like, no, you've got to pay attention to what you're doing.
And anything man-made, it'll fail. You know, if there's that footage, it was I think it was Volkswagen. They had like the CEO out there in front of everybody, in front of the media. And I shouldn't laugh. The guy did get hurt a little. He's standing there and said, look, these cars are a self-driving car. No, it had somebody driving it, but they drove toward him, and it had a pedestrian monitor towards to slam on the brakes. It failed, and the guy went up over the hood. Yeah, you have to Google it. I'll send you the link. But right in front of everybody, I think he hurt his leg, but he didn't get killed. But he got hit like at 10 miles an hour because the car didn't slam on the brakes like it's supposed to. It didn't detect him. The sensor was maybe broken, but he went over that hood in front of everybody while they were advertising and portraying in front of the media how great their pedestrian monitor system is.
It's terrible.
I know. But, you know, we've come a long way with vehicles, and, you know, our fatality rates have gone down because you got to think, I'm a numbers guy. So in the 80s, in the late 70s and early 80s, Texas was about 10 million people. Remember I said earlier, we're at 30 million now.
Yeah.
So 10 million people back in the day, but we had still 4,000 or 5,000 a year getting killed on Texas highways. People were not wearing the seatbelts. That's why in 1990, 92, there's 91 and 92, the Click It or Ticket campaign was formed, and they got up to now a 94% compliance rate.
Oh, wow.
When it was in the 60s, low 60s.
I would have thought it was less than that back then.
And but
in George West, it was like 2%.
Yeah, so. And you know, and also, but you know, these old timers who are 80, 90 years old, back when they were driving, there's hardly any cars out there because baby Texas back in the 60s, I don't know what the population was, maybe 5 million, but the safety standards on our highways, that we call them the drunk bumps, drive-by braille, how they have the grooves and the yellow line. You know how many lives that has saved because people who are distracted or falling asleep, they drift over that yellow line and the whole car rattles. They're like, oh gosh, got to wake up and go. And also on the shoulder, because when we're on traffic stops and we're talking to somebody, and we always do our stuff on the passenger side, if we hear that rumble strip going off, we're going to pop up and see, are they coming at me? Because it's time to run. Yeah. It's a good warning device. And I think that little things like that TxDOT does to our highways, and they've innovated these highways so much more than what they were before. To added a lot of safety features with markings, signage, and those rattle bumps. I don't know what they're called. What are they called?
I think they call rumble something.
Rumble something. Yeah, I call them drunk bumps. Keeps the drunks within their lane. But so little things like that.
That's a good name for it.
And safety features in vehicles between airbags, seatbelts, crumble zones. Because in the old days, cars were like tanks. You could hit and they head on. You could still fix them up and put them back on the road. Now cars are designed to just absorb the impact, and they're totaled out after a wreck, as they should be, because it's a safety thing, and it's helped save lives.
Well, let me ask you this: whenever you're doing a traffic stop, and that was one thing I wanted to talk to you too. I like to think that I'm a pretty sharp guy, and so when I get pulled over, I try and pull over immediately, and sometimes I go a little bit farther because I want to find a safe spot,
Exactly.
and I usually pull over. I get my license. I get my insurance card. A lot of times it's on the phone now. So State Farm sends me an email, and I take a screenshot. It stays in there. I go and I roll down all my windows because I want who's ever pulling me over to be able to see through the back seat. What are some things that people can do to make that an easier interaction between law enforcement and citizens?
Yeah, that's a good question. We teach this to young drivers at schools and in driver's ed, what to do. Of course, if you get behind, if you see lights behind you, the law is to pull over and stop. Because a lot of times running code to a crash or going after somebody else, I'll get behind a car and they won't move over because they don't think they did anything wrong. And I finally end up like, well, I'm going to stop this guy. And he finally pulls over, and I said, why don't you pull over? And I wasn't speeding. Well, what makes you think I was even going after you? But yeah, if you want to find a safe location to pull over, and officers are good about knowing when to turn the lights on. Like, we don't want you to stop on a bridge or anything. And if there's times where we do light you up and you pull over and you're against the guardrail, we'll get on our PA system and say, can you please move off the bridgeway?
Okay.
That way we're well off the roadway, and utilize that shoulder, because you've seen how officers, when somebody pulls on the shoulder, their car's kind of canted and they do all their business on the side of the road. Turn on your flashers. And like I said, for women out there, or even men, if you feel like you're in the middle of nowhere and you may be getting stopped by somebody who's not a real officer, and if you're fearful, just call 911. It'll take you to the nearest dispatch. Put on your flashers. Don't speed up. Maintain your speed. Turn on your interior light if you have to feel that you need to do that. But call 911. They'll make sure to validate that. But don't go digging for things while you're pulling over, because we're watching, and that's contributed to people hiding things, beer cans, drugs, guns, whatever. So just keep your hands on the wheel. We're going to come up to you. We're going to talk to you. So pull over to a safe spot at night. Turn on your interior light. Roll your windows down. If you have your crazy friends in the back seat, don't have them, hooping and hollering, making fun of you, whatever. Have everybody just on their best behavior, because an officer doesn't know what they're walking up on.
Yeah.
And, we're going to ask for your driver. We're going to identify ourselves. We're going to explain the reason for the stop, and we're going to ask for your license and insurance. So there's no rushing through it. When then you can retrieve your information. And there's no, and of course, nobody loves to get stopped, and we get that. And just because you do get stopped doesn't mean you're going to get a ticket. 90% of our stops are probably warnings anyway. But don't get out of your vehicle if you pull over. Try not to sound hostile. If you don't agree with it or think something was right, try to engage the officer. Hey, look, I'm not wearing my seatbelt because I just left the store or whatever. And more than likely, we've heard that excuse a million times. But can you use that excuse in a crash if you just left the store and then get in a wreck? There's no do-overs. So our seatbelt enforcement policy is pretty strict, because we see what happens when it's not enforced. But
so let me ask you this: if somebody's digging for their wallet in their back pocket, or a lady's going into her purse for it, is that something that's better off done once you've gotten to the window? Because most people start digging when you're
exactly. It's habit for somebody to say, "Oh, I'm getting stopped. I better get my license out, or I'm going to dig." Well, we see a lot of furtive movement. We're going to think, okay, it kind of perks our ears up. We're not necessarily saying you're a criminal hiding drugs, but that's consistent with what we've seen. in the past. So just like we ask, just keep your hands on the wheel, both of them 10 and 2. We're going to come up to you and we're going to talk to you, identify ourselves, explain, and then we're going to ask for the proper information. So.
And that's a better time to start digging.
Yeah, then we'll let you retrieve it and, explain if you have a pistol or whatever, if you're a law-abiding citizen and have the gun in there and, say, hey, just let you know as a courtesy, I have a gun on my hip. We're not going to disarm you. That's the last thing. We're in the business of disarming law-abiding gun-carrying individuals. So, yeah, and if, and I know it can get heated and people can yell and cuss and scream, but there's a place to argue, and everybody has the right to take it to court if they feel they were innocent or didn't do that. And take it to court. By all means, take it to court. You should. That's your right to. That's where you contest it.
So now that we're doing constitutional carry, before that we had a CHL license, right? And so you get pulled over. I'd hand the driver's license, CHL, so they knew that I. Not necessarily maybe had a gun on me because maybe I don't have one with me, but it was more of a means of. My concern was always, well, if I don't give him my CHL license, and they run it, he's going to say, "How come you didn't?" Show your CHL license? And
that's something they learned in CHL class, to hand that over and say, or they just completely forgot because they're flabbergasted. Maybe their kid had an emergency, they're at the hospital, and that's why they got stopped for speeding, and their mind is on something else. And we use discretion on stops. We listen to people's stories, and there are reasons why sometimes people speed. I mean, there's reasons why we speed. That's why we have emergency equipment. So tragic things happen to good people. And if somebody says, "Hey, your son or daughter's in the hospital, been in a bad wreck," you think you're going to get there at 35, or you're going to do a little over to get there, but do it safely. And there's reasons for it, but we just recommend do it safe. And then if you get stopped, but I've stopped a lot of people doing over 100 miles an hour, and it's shame on them for always throwing their kids in the bus. Say, "Yeah, my son's at the hospital," and then I'll say, "Oh yeah, what hospital?" Or I say, "What's wrong with him?" "Oh, I don't know." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't know? Well, what hospital that?" And they start thinking they're lying. They're lying about it. And I'm like, "Look," I said, "I'm a parent." And I said, "If somebody says your kid's in the hospital, I'm not going to hang up the phone and say, 'See you there.' What's the first thing you're going to ask? What's wrong with them? What happened?" But they don't. So in the process of the line trying to get out of a ticket, I tell them, "Look, you're going to get a ticket, but shame on you forever saying something as your child in the hospital, because that's bad juju. That could, what if something like that happens to them?"
Yeah.
It's just people do some silly things out there. But we've heard a lot of crazy excuses. But
well, I guess with y'all's experience, y'all kind of almost seen everything, So I guess as somebody who doesn't get pulled over very often, we'll get nervous, right? And so I think being able to let you guys know that, hey, I've got a firearm on me, or here's my CHL, or with the constitutional carry, hey, I've got a firearm, just letting you guys know. And one thing that I learned at the jail was my behavior can help influence your behavior. So one thing that I always try and do is I try and be calm. I try and talk respectfully.
Yeah.
And I think once an officer kind of gets that vibe from you, they understand that, hey, you're not some asshole. And
going back to me being a training officer for many years, and say you're going to stop somebody for 7-8 over, that's normally a warning offense in my book. I'm not saying everybody will write a warning for that, but I normally do. I usually like to go beyond the spot to stop and look for other things, drunk drivers or drugs or whatnot. But say somebody I walk up there and they cuss me out and all this and that, and I think, what, I'm going to change that and warning into a ticket. I don't do that. I still say, "Look, your attitude's terrible and you must be having a bad day, but my intention when I stopped you was to write your warning. And even though your attitude, I don't write attitude tickets,
right?
But some officers out there may do that. So, conduct yourself a little different, but, I still write them a warning, let them run their mouth. Like I said, people, you never know what's on their brain when you get them stopped. They could be going through a divorce. They could be, could have lost a family member. There's a lot on their mind. And the last thing they need is, Trooper Joe back here lighting me up and stopping, thinking they're going to ruin my day even more, but write me a ticket. So yeah, we take consideration. Like I said, you got to be a good humanitarian to realize there's some people going through some bad things, and always, not a lot of times I talk to them and, say, "Look, I understand you're going through a lot. I've written some warnings for some very high speeds because of what they're going through, and then kind of turn that table, and you could be more effective." And because, say I stop somebody who's going through something really bad, going to an emergency, and I get them stopped and I write them a ticket. What are they going to do? They're going to keep going hauling butt the same way. But I explain to them, hey, look, I understand it's very important. However, we want to get you there safely as well. They're already safe at the hospital getting treated. Just get there in a safe manner, write them a warning and send them on their way. I mean, it's nobody wants a $350, $400 ticket on top of these financial times.
Sure.
The way it is now. I mean, that's a full tank of gas right there.
That's one full tank of gas.
So yeah, as troopers and officers, I like to hope, and there's some cops out there, I don't know, I haven't seen many in our department, but there's some out there that just write everybody tickets. So if you get one of those to stop you, I feel for you.
Yeah.
But they're out there.
One thing that I'll tell people is, in my time working at the jail, pay your tickets and take care of your warrants. One of the things that I would say, one of the things that always kind of broke my heart was in the summertime we'd get the majority of them. But you'd see a husband, a wife, 2 or 3 kids going from San Antonio to Corpus or somewhere down to the valley. It's vacation time. They get pulled over in Live Oak County, and all of a sudden they've got warrants and tickets. In
front of the whole family. I've done that a million times. On Thanksgiving, holidays, Christmas, they're going to see grandma and stuff, and they have a warrant for a hot check they didn't take care of 5-6 years ago. And in front of the kids, who's now crying, who's going to hate cops the rest of their life because big bad trooper was putting the dad in handcuffs or mom in handcuffs and had to go to jail. Yeah, that's heartbreaking.
And to get out, they got to take care of it. And
they got to wait for the next morning to be arraigned.
Yeah.
So the family sometimes gets a hotel, or they just continue on their way and come back and get him or her later.
The guys that I saw that happen to was mostly men. They'd have to take care of their ticket. And that was literally their entire vacation money.
I know.
And it's time to turn around and go back.
And then the whole family suffers. So yeah, that a simple one seatbelt ticket or something that you can pay for $80, or even take a driver safety education or something. Judge, it's up to the judge is ultimately what they want to do with it. But that can turn into a $150 failed to appear fee. So now you're looking at $300 for a simple seatbelt ticket that could have been taken care of for a lot less. But yeah, that's one of the things that people would get really hostile. I've noticed about the seatbelts. They think it's their right not to wear a seatbelt. And if you're out there listening and don't wear a seatbelt, I'm telling you, there's so many crashes that I have worked personally or been to, a simple one vehicle rollover, that these people would have walked away barely bruised, but they get ejected and their head comes out of the car as it's rolling, and you can only imagine what happens, and they don't survive. And then we do these death notifications, and throughout our investigation, we usually end up going back to the family because they'll have questions. And I've sat in living rooms with the whole family around me. They're saying, so if so-and-so you think had worn their seatbelt, would they be alive? I'm like, absolutely. I hate to tell you, but yes. It's so simple. It's such a simple click and just go. And some people are like, well, I don't want to rub my neck. Yeah. Well, you know what's going to hurt a lot worse going through that windshield? At even a 10-mile-an-hour crash, 12 miles an hour, to an abrupt stop, if you're not wearing a seatbelt, you're going to bounce off that front windshield. Sure. You're going to smash your face up against it. Imagine that at 30 to 50 to 70 miles an hour. Yeah. So.
That's something that something so simple. And I used to hate wearing my seatbelt, especially coming from a small town. I'm not wearing my seatbelt. As I've gotten older, I'm like, it's important to wear your seatbelt. Yeah. And but doing something simple like that can potentially save your life. And it keeps your family from having to go through that pain of losing you. Exactly. And it keeps somebody like you from having to go tell a family that you lost somebody. When all you have to do is put your seatbelt on.
Exactly. And if you get if you're going down the road, like truck drivers, they're bad about it because they're driving an 80,000-pound truck. They think they're invincible. I mean, the only thing solid in those trucks are the engines. The rest is fiberglass. Yeah. Those things fall apart. And those guys, if they get off the road or something, they'll bounce out of that seat. And they're no longer in control of that truck, and now it's going down the road. They're trying to scramble to get back into that seat. I've seen the in-cab videos. There's a lot of them online. You can look. Just type in unrestrained drivers crashes, and there's thousands of videos out there. Watch them. And people in the back seat. Used to not be a law that you'd had to wear it in the back seat unless you're a child under 15, I believe, back then, 20, 30 years ago. But there's crash test dummy footage that we use on our presentation. So these kids showing that, look, anybody who's, 100-pound body in a head-on crash or a bad crash, the momentum's going to go forward. It's going to crush the front seat and hurt the person in the front seat, whether it's the driver or passenger. Yeah. So that's why it's important that everybody in the car wears a seatbelt 24/7 every time.
I need you to talk directly to my wife right now.
Yeah.
And I need you to tell her to take her damn feet off the dashboard.
Oh my God. That makes my knees hurt right now because when you said that, and my wife's done that a few times too, and I'm like, get your feet down. When I'm going down the highway and I see, it's like I said, it's mostly women because they're shorter, and the men are usually driving because that's what men do, and their feet are up there and they're sleeping. You know what happens when an airbag comes out at 300 miles an hour?
Tell them, Sergeant.
It's going to roll. It's going to break from your ankle, your shin, push your knees back, and your femur bones are going to go backwards. A good analogy is, remember in Wizard of Oz when the house fell on the witch, her legs rolled up backwards? That's what it looks like when we come up on these crashes where these girls have had their feet on the dash.
And that's mostly from the seatbelt. I mean,
the
airbag,
yeah,
right?
Blast them right backwards, and their feet will be up by their ears. And it's very graphic, but think about it. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's a machine coming out. It's an explosion.
Yeah.
And, we're 70% liquid, and our bones snap like twigs behind that kind of force. And it literally rolls their legs backwards.
Yeah.
And multiple operations later, they may get their legs back, but they'll never be the same. So, yeah, get your feet off the dash.
Get your feet off the dash, Nina. Man, I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, man, I think we've touched on everything. I wonder, what do you have?
Just, like I said, we're hiring. If anybody out there's listening thinks, they want to serve their community in the state of Texas and get to wear a cool uniform and hat, that's the little things I saw when I was 11 years old that, this job, even though it's a crap time to become a cop, but we still need good people to do it because the citizens of Texas and these little communities, whether you go to DPS or going to be a local cop, if that's something you have a passion for, I've tossed it around, do it because we do a lot of good things for people. You know how many tires we change? A lot, especially in the summertime. Heck, I guarantee by the time I leave San Antonio, get back to Belton, I'll pass 2 people with flat tires. And if I can safely get to them, I'll pull over, turn on my lights, and we help them change tires. We do that free of charge. There's many times I've just got behind people and like, what are you doing? I got a flat. Well, want to fix it? Well, I'm waiting on AAA. Where are they coming from? Austin. And this is like 2 hours from Austin. I'm like, I can get you out here in 5 minutes. Watch this. We carry a floor jack. But anyway, you help people. We don't just write tickets. We help people. We do a lot of things within our community and just to be part of it. And, it's something that if you toss it around your head, that means you're capable of doing it. If you think something you'd like to do, be that or a fireman. And, but like I said, this atmosphere with police, the majority of the garbage that you see against the police is on the news because so many people come up to us all the time and say, hey, we support what you do, especially in the summer of 2020 when the people were burning the streets, burning the cities down all over the country and wanting to kill cops, chanting for their death in the streets. I mean, come on, that's crap.
Blocking highways and all
blocking the highways. These officers have families. They're gonna risk their lives to protect a total stranger. You don't care what color you are, what sex you are, what your sexual affiliation is. I mean, we protect in our community. That means everybody in it.
Sure.
Even if you're a prior criminal and if you need help, we're going to help you. I mean, we're not going to judge you. You know how many times I'm in a traffic stop and somebody who's been to prison, they're real nervous and they call me boss and everything. I know they've been to prison and have the prison tattoos and they're like, yeah, man. And so how much? I said, you've been down before? Yeah. Well, yeah. What'd you do? And I said, I'm just curious. I just want to know who you are. And like, yeah, but I did my time. And then I got out and I said, good. I said, you know what? There's nothing I like to see more than somebody who's made some bad choices, went to prison and come out and they're a good citizen. That's what the prison's supposed to do.
Yeah.
You learn from those mistakes. You reform these people because you don't know why they did these things. They had bad childhoods. They had abusive childhoods. So that's all they knew. So I shake their hand and say, look, man, thank you for doing what's right. And you keep doing what you're doing. Talk about their wife and kids and work and I tell them, there's especially coming from a uniformed officer, because they automatically think, oh man, he thinks because I was a drug dealer, 20 years ago, or I robbed a store when I was 19 because I was dead ass broke, and now they're going to think that they're going to judge me for. Well, we don't. You may have a criminal history as tall as me, but it may have been years ago and you changed your ways. Hey, we're all human. And I tell them, like I said before, the only reason why I'm in this uniform, I didn't get caught for some of the dumb things I did when I was young.
Sure.
So.
Sure.
But thanks for having me here.
What is y'all's website that people can go?
Go to TXDPS. You can go into recruiting. You can go look at our local our statewide news. It tells you the mission of DPS. Just go into Texas Department of Public Safety. It's really easy to navigate. I recommend everybody go on there. And if you have any kind of traffic questions, go on there. Use a search bar and you can put things in, and it just drop box after drop box that'll lead you in the right direction and help you out.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
Man, well, I appreciate you making that long drive.
Oh, it's not a long drive at all, 2 hours, and I took the scenic route. And so, but no, it's what we do. You know, my job, I'm fortunately to be able to be the face and spokesperson of a department that I've loved for a long time. And, you know, this is what I do. I do radios, shows, TVs, PSA announcements, and, you know, interact with my community more. And I mean, yeah, I still stop a car now and then, but my main focus is safety education. So we get the word out there about telling people to move over, slow down, not to drink and drive. And we go to these schools and show these PowerPoints and videos to these kids that, you know, I remember when I was a kid and the cops would come in and talk about underage drinking. And I'm like, yeah, right, because we're going to do it this weekend. But you know, unfortunately, I've lost some friends that in high school that were drinking and driving that had killed themselves. And luckily, I wasn't in the car with them at that time because they were my buddies that we did stupid things with.
Sure.
So it happens. And, you know, I put out all the press releases in my 7 counties. And just the other day, another 17-year-old, you know, intoxicated, hit a tree and got ejected.
That's terrible.
Yeah, senior in high school, so...
Well, I'll tell you what, I've appreciated doing this with you.
Yeah.
You're a hell of a guy.
Well, I appreciate it. And I can just rattle on forever. It's hard to keep me on topic because I'll be like squirrel and I'll go on to something else. So like I say, I could be here for hours and talk because I have so many stories in 24 years to talk about.
Sure.
But no, I love life. I'm very blessed to do what I do. And I want to keep rocking and rolling as long as I can. And one day retire, and they're going to pay me to never come back.
Yeah.
So that'll be in about 5 or 6 years. I mean, now that I'm doing this, I really enjoy it. So I may do this into my 50s. And so we'll
That's
see.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you, Sergeant.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. And thanks for everybody out there listening. And hope it was a good conversation.
Yes, sir. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.